Easter is just 3 days away. It is cold, wet and windy in the town of Deinze. The traditional start now for the 71st running of the Ghent Wevelgem Classic. Hello everybody, I'm Phil Liggett alongside me Paul Show, and welcome to World Cycling Productions edition now of the 71st Ghent Wevelgem. Let's remind ourselves first up, who won last year? Yes, Oscar Freire there, becoming the first ever Spanish rider to win this event. You know, 13 nations have won it, but only 8 nations have won it once. And the big triumphs, of course, are coming all from Belgium. Paul, are Belgium going to win today?
Well, being a Brit, I have to say that I think a Brit might win today. Mark Cavendish is the super favourite of this race, having taken out Milan-San Remo just a couple of weeks ago. Everybody is talking about Cavendish to win, but to win in weather conditions like this, he's going to have to be a tough boy, because this is a kind of race condition today that the fans are really going to enjoy, but not the riders.
Absolutely right, and the fans of course will be out here again in the hundreds, because yes, it is bleak, it is windy, but with this wind it could make for a very exciting race. The course is traditional, Paul. We've got those 2 climbs of the Kemmelberg.
Yeah, it starts, as we've always said, down here in Deinze. It goes up to the coast, along the coast, and then the turn inland. But with these windy weather conditions, this race could spit to absolute smithereens. And then 2 circuits of the Kemmelberg, which is normally the decisive part of the race, and then charging down the flat roads into the finish line in Wevelgem.
All right, but as you can see over my shoulder here, where the sound is coming from, the riders starting to come to the start. Time for Paul to go and strut his stuff.
Well, George, this is a real Belgian day, isn't it?
Oh yeah, this is going to be a pretty epic day with the wind and the rain. It's going to be important to stay out of trouble, and we got one of the big favorites of the race, so we're going to keep him out of trouble and keep him in the front.
One of those days where everybody's going to battle, really, from the first kilometre right the way down to the Kemmelberg, and a lot of responsibility for you with Cavendish.
Oh yeah, a lot. I mean, we already got a call from another team that said they wanted to put it down from the start, so I would expect fireworks from the beginning today, and it's going to be a tough race, but we should be ready for it.
But you have to keep out of trouble as well, because this weekend, Paris-Roubaix.
Yeah, it's a big, obviously big goal of mine, biggest of the year, so I'm hoping that everything goes well there.
Good luck, keep warm, and we'll see you at the finish.
All right, thanks, Paul.
Tell me, JJ, what's a man from Argentina doing here in Belgium today?
That's what George asked me, was that what a guy from Argentina is doing here. Well, I guess it's our job, and it's why Europe is so hard to race, because you have to go against these conditions, and a lot of guys are really good in these conditions.
This is the kind of race that a man with your sprinting ability could come up with a win for today.
Yeah, it could actually. I think we will see how the race develops, see how the wind comes, and I think we will also have a lot of strong guys in the team, and they can race in a different way. So we have a lot of things to play today. Thank you.
Well, Mark, the weather conditions today are a little bit reminiscent of the Isle of Man.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, got home the weekend, it was training in rain, and come here, wind and rain. You know, it's good.
And the team, I think, will have a lot of responsibility, because with these weather conditions, it's really difficult to control a race.
Oh, absolutely. You know, for sure the rain makes the race a little more nervous, but the wind is going to play a big factor in the outcome of the race. Last year it wasn't so windy, and the race didn't really start till the Kemmelberg, and now I think the wind's going to make the race start a lot sooner before the Kemmelberg. So.
Spoke to George Hincap, and he said he's heard a lot of teams are going to start to race straight out of the blocks, and that's going to make it very difficult for a guy like you.
Yeah, but you know, I've got a good team. I'm confident in my team, and I'm confident in my form, so hopefully it's not too much of a disadvantage.
What about a little bit of history, because a Brit hasn't won this race since 1974? Do you think about things like that?
Not really. You know, I won San Remo after Tommy and won since the 60s, so you know, I'll be trying again. I tried last year, I'll try again here, so thanks very much. Cheers.
Well, Brad, a good win for you the other day in the 3 days of La Panna. That's always as good for the morale.
Yeah, it was a pretty good condition at the moment, and I opted out of Flanders with a hope of maybe doing something on Sunday. You know, Sunday, I always find if you do Flanders 100%, you never really recover for Roubaix, so that was kind of the objective really, was to sort of just miss out on Flanders, come here a bit fresher and with a view to doing something on Sunday. So
always a little bit of motivation for you as well, racing in Belgium, because you were born not too far away from here.
Yeah, it's just a great place, and you know, the people love it. It's so different to France. You know, everyone seems so miserable in France these days, whereas Belgium is just still national sport, so it's fantastic.
Terrible conditions today. It's going to be very windy out by the coast, and everyone's going to be fighting to stay at the front, and it's always a battle, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be okay. I don't think it'll be too bad. I've seen worse Ghent Wevelgem, so I think, yeah, I mean, I guess when it's like this, you kind of eliminate half the field already because everyone's sort of thinking about the first feed. So,
What about Garmin today? What's your tactic going to be?
well, Muscant's a little bit tired from Sunday still, and he's looking more to Roubaix, so he's kind of just going to see how things go today. But we got Julian Dean, who's, you know, if it comes to a sprint like last year, we got a chance of maybe getting up there. So, but obviously all eyes are on Cavendish today, who's kind of the fastest man here, really.
Well, we'll see how it goes, but keep safe.
Cheers, thank you.
Good luck. Well, Graham, slightly different to Australian weather, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a fair bit different, a lot colder, a lot windier, a lot wetter.
Your team seem to be pretty much prepared for these classics. They're in form. They've been in form since Het Volk, and this is the kind of race that really you could come up with a win.
Yeah, it's going to be a really tough day today. The wind's going to play havoc. Of course, the rain and it being pretty cold. It's only about 9 degrees now, so yeah, it's going to be a tough day. It's a tough day for everyone. It's bad weather, but it's bad weather for everyone. So we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully, I'm at the pointy end of the race.
Despite the bad weather, when you're a sprinter, you're motivated for a race like this, and you can put the weather a little bit out of your mind.
Yeah, definitely. It's a big race, and it's a big opportunity to win a big race. You know, sprinters don't really, you know, you've got Milan San Remo and Ghent Wevelgem more or less. So it's one of the biggest chances we've got, and you know, I'll try my best today. Cheers, mate.
See you later. Thanks. See you. Well, Robbie, I've been following you on Twitter. You've been preparing properly for this race, haven't you?
Well, I've been riding the races that suit me, and in De Panne things were going quite well, and I didn't ride Flanders to come into this race fresh. I'm going to need that freshness with this wind and the rain just to get through the day. It's not going to be a simple race.
But I see on your Twitter account you've been doing quite a lot of motor pacing to get that little bit of end speed.
Yeah, I did some day before yesterday just to, yeah, get the legs going in circles again after some hard races. So, no, I've been working towards this race and the form's quite good, so hopefully I can get a good result today.
It's going to be a very tough Ghent Wevelgem today with these weather conditions, a bit different from Spain.
Well, now it's bad weather also in Spain, and before the Classic it was also bad weather in Barcelona, so... I mean, every time in tough weather and windy races I'm performing good, so... I like today better than last year. We won with Oscar, but me personally, I prefer this weather, windy.
With Oscar not being here, it puts a bit of responsibility on you for trying to get a second win for Spain.
Yeah, it is, and we'll try. We became second in 2005, and I always like this race, even when my mind is always on next Sunday on Roubaix. But they say dangerous, but for me it's perfect race for preparing the hell of the North. Thanks.
Well, Roger, good start to the season. A pity Thor Hushoff is not here, but it puts a bit more of a chance on your book.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, it's a real pity that Thor's not here, because with Thor we had a real, you know, one of the favourites for the race. So we just have to make the best of it. And, you know, it's changed our tactics a little bit. Now we've got to try and open the race up early on. So, yeah, open some doors for me.
Being a man living in Belgium, loving Belgium, you're not too bothered about this weather at all, are you?
Yeah. The older I get, the less I like it. But no, it's not too bad. I mean, it's better for us if it's like this. Like last year, a real sunny race, and then it comes down to a bunch sprint. It's makes Ghent Wevelgem a bit of a non-event. So it's nice that it's going to be a bit of a race today, at least.
Okay, we'll enjoy it.
Cheers. Good. See ya.
You've got a lot of responsibility on the team, former winner of the race, and Mark Cavendish is going to have a lot of reliance on the team today.
Yeah, Mark, it's a good race for Mark, but I think today we have to look with the wind.
The wind is going to be a major factor, especially when you get up to the coast. That's going to be very dangerous.
Yeah, already before we have 80% crosswind, that will be dangerous.
Good luck.
Okay, thanks.
Graham,
yes.
Are you going to enjoy the day today?
Very much.
What about the man at the front of the motorbike? Is he going to keep this thing upright?
Easily today, there's not many cobbles.
Yeah, but it's going to be a bit grippy when we get out to the ocean, because that wind is going to really make it split up into echelons.
Yeah, but it makes our job easier.
So who's going to win today?
I'll go for Cavendish, but maybe a Hausler as well.
Now, Luke, as a former journalist, do you think Graham's coming up with a calculated guess?
Yes, he always does. Yeah, always.
Good luck today.
Thank you very much.
All right, well, let's get out on the course now. Our pictures are picking it up with 85 kilometres to go. There is a breakaway, and what a breakaway it's turning out to be. At the moment, holding 3:34 on the peloton. A quick recap for you. Mark Cavendish has missed the breakaway. He punctured 3 kilometres in, apparently the same time that 33 riders were getting clear of the field. Tom Bonen made the breakaway, has had a flat tyre and is not here now. And also Heinrich Hausler was here and he has crashed. So big stories here, but the most important thing is, Paul, this breakaway is very strong and there's no Lamprey, there's no Quick Step and there's no Silence Lotto riders.
Well, a number of big teams missing out, but I tell you what, it went in a very difficult manner right from the start. They came out of the gate, and as soon as they pulled in the neutralised flag, I think, Phil, a lot of teams had decided today that they were going to toughen up the course. One team very present in this leading group of riders, of course, is Team Cervelo Test Team, and they have got 5 riders still in the group. They actually had 7 because Fabian Cancellara was in that early breakaway as well with them, but he also exited with a flat tyre.
Well, I have to say, a continuing fine show of great form for the newcomer on the team. Well, they're all newcomers on Cervelo. It started this year, but Daniel Lloyd finally getting onto a world-class team here, the UK rider from the south of England, and he's in this move too. I can also tell you that Robbie Mcewen has made it into this breakaway as well, and just before they started, Mcewen came to me. He said this will not be a group sprint. There'll be 30 riders go, and the race will be decided with 30 riders. Now, is he going to be right? There are 33 here.
Well, so yeah, I'm going to say he's actually got it wrong because there's 33, but there's still a chance to eliminate a lot of riders because we're getting now into the area in Belgium called the Heuvelland, and that's the area renowned for the little climbs that are around here, the Monteberg, the Zwarteberg, the Black Mountain, and of course, what all of these riders are concerned about now is looming on the horizon is the Kemmelberg, which they'll go over on 2 occasions.
Well, this is Edwald Boysen-Hagen, who's at the team car here, just working his day out ahead. He's in the breakaway. A lot of people think this man is going to be the top cyclist in the next couple of years. Now, he hasn't won a major race yet, but he's certainly won some big stages. A clutch of races in the Tour of Britain. He's won stage in the Tour of Ireland a couple of seasons ago. He's absolutely superb.
Brian Home is the team manager in the car there for Columbia High Road, and he's a man who's been around the circuit for an awful long time. George Hincapie is in this group, and I have to say maybe George Hincapie today, Phil, will be looking to try and snatch himself a little victory. He had a crash on the run-in towards the finish line in the Tour of Flanders, going down at about 350 metres to go. He wasn't so badly injured, and in fact he said he thought he was in a position to get himself a top 5 finish.
Which is exactly what he did last year. He finished 5th last year by taking the same course, but it didn't work out this time. George is, we spoke to him at the start too. He's in the breakaway, and he said he's got good form. And the family's turned up to watch him as well, so that always helps, I guess.
Well, I think Columbia are also pretty strong in this leading group because they've also got Marcus Berghardt in the group, a man who won this race a couple of years ago. There's a number of riders in there from Liquigas. And, of course, I think, for me, the most dangerous team, and we've seen them be very dominant since the early part of the season, is the Cervelo team, Phil, because they have got 5 riders, and you could pick almost any one of those 5 riders to come up with the victory this afternoon.
Well, not surprisingly, the sprinter on the team here, Robbie Mcewen from Team Katusha. He's gotten the Napolitano in there as a little bit of a help, but they're staying there, keeping their noses clean just now. They're riding near the rear of what is a very large escape. 3:32, 83 kilometres to go. It's not a done deal by any means, but again, the question is, there's only Lamprey, Quick Step or Silence Lotto to do any chasing now because everybody else is represented.
Well, I think with Paris-Roubaix looming on the horizon for a lot of these riders, I don't think they're going to chase down this breakaway. There's a lot of riders, I think, pretty much demoralised by the bad weather. These men in the breakaway, though, they will be super motivated because they can see the chance of a victory in a semi-classic like this race at Ghent Wevelgem. I think that 3.5 minutes, Phil, we're looking at back to the main field is going to be probably close to a quarter of an hour at the finish.
Well, everybody says what a great place Belgium is, but it has to be like any other country when the sun shines, I think you must add in, because it is very miserable today. The riders just didn't even look at the skies. They just got well wrapped up for what they knew would be a tough day. Those that knew rode near the front because they left the block so quickly, over 50 kilometres an hour. When Mark Cavendish had his flat tyre, he simply could not recatch the peloton. And when he finally got back, the race had gone. And at the moment, we've got these 33 up here. Rabobank also well represented in this breakaway. Nice to see Matty Hayman. They're all Rabobank riders, those 3 there. Matty Hayman, Bram Tankink is up there. And He won, I suppose, really the biggest win he's got was his Commonwealth Games gold road race medal in Melbourne.
Yeah, Bradley Wiggins in this race as well. After a fairly successful Classics campaign, he was a winner of the time trial in the 3 days of La Panna. And he was also, Phil, looking very motivated this morning. I suppose the added motivation for him is the fact that he was born in Ghent, although he holds the right to both a British and an Australian passport.
I'm delighted to say that Jeremy Hunt is here too, the rider who almost makes the big time. He's had some results here, and he rides very well at this time of the year. And Jeremy, twice a British champion, again, like a lot of riders, switching teams to the new Cervelo team this winter, and hoping at last he's found the team that will take him to the Tour de France, because he is riding very well, as always.
Andreas Clear just there at the back, number 185. I'm a bit surprised to see these guys sitting at the back end of the main field. They're probably just getting themselves undressed and ready for the serious action that's going to start in the next couple of kilometres. I just caught a glimpse on the horizon of the mountains. You can just see in front of the riders there. That, in fact, is the red mountain, the Mont Rouge. What these riders are going to do, they're actually going to circumnavigate the mountain first and go over the climb called the Zwarteberg before then dropping down to find the Kemmelberg for the first time.
Andreas Clear there, number 185 at the back. He won this race, in fact, outsprinting the Australian just retired Henk Vogels. And that was a nice summer's day when they got to the line on that occasion. Now, that little group there, they're on good roads at the moment. This will change, of course. The Kemmelberg is cobbled, and it usually has a big crowd on it. It's barried. The descent, after the serious crashes we've had in the last couple of years, again, will go down the smooth side, which is much narrower but a lot safer, especially in conditions like this.
Absolutely. Many of these riders would have been very precariously going down the cobbled side of the Kemmelberg, and I think it's a good idea to put in the slightly different descent that they put in last year because of the dangerous nature. Going back, this is 3 minutes 45 seconds behind. There's Tom Bonen. This is the group of chasers. I just noticed that Mark Cavendish was there over to the right-hand side. Only Cofidis sitting on the front end of the main field, Phil. I don't think this is a chase in earnest. There's Cavendish.
There's Cavendish now. Little Cav, he lost his chance 3 kilometres in, yet he'd pinned a lot of his late season or early season training since the Milan-San Remo on winning this race today. And, well, that's right, bike racing, I guess. I think his chance has gone now. I can't see anybody bringing that group back because there's nobody left to seriously chase it down.
And as you mentioned, there's a lot of big teams happily represented with probably the right combination of riders for them. Even Columbia, although they were counting on Mark Cavendish this morning, they've got 3 very strong riders in that leading group, so they're certainly not going to chase. The big losers out on the day, I have to say, are Team Quickstep, but I think they'll take a back seat today because they're now starting to think 3 or 4 days down the road for, of course, the big one on Sunday, Paris-Roubaix.
Exactly, and it was always the top race at Easter, and on this occasion, this year, the calendar falls exactly right for Paris-Roubaix. It's Easter Sunday. We can anticipate an awful lot of people around the cobblestones of northern France as they come away from Compiègne and into Roubaix for the finish. And these riders, don't forget, would have to make now what is a very serious effort, which they may not want to do, having conceded 3:45. And once we get on to the Kemmelberg, then it's 2 circuits. It stays hilly for a little while.
It certainly does, and that's where it's going to get very grippy in the leading group of 33 riders because they know that's the possibility of splitting the group. I think currently 33 is too big a group to be managed, and that's why I have a feeling before we get down to the run-in there will be a split in that leading group of 33 riders. We're looking at them now. You can see still pretty much organised in this bordure, this echelon across the road, which allows the riders to shelter from the wind, which is coming from the left-hand side of the screen or on the rider's right-hand shoulder.
This is Matty Heyman, and good to see him in a hard-working move here because he's a workhorse for the team, not a big winner on it. I think they were probably delighted as he was when he won the Commonwealth Games gold medal. He's riding for Australia, of course, on that occasion. Marcus Burkhardt, the winner of this race in 2007, just getting in ahead of Roger Hammond, the British rider who is on the Cervelo team.
Well, Murillo Fischer is the rider there from Liquigas, and if they take him to the finish, he's a serious candidate of getting the victory. But I reckon one man today, Phil, is going to be extremely attentive in this leading group, and that will be Robbie Mcewen. He was extremely motivated before the start. I know he's done a lot of motor pacing leading up to this event to make sure that he had the right speed in his legs. Just looking there briefly at Johnny Welch, the team manager of Garmin, and he was looking after Chris Sutton, who I think... after a nasty crash in the early part of the season, is finding his legs once again.
That was Murillo Fischer there, one of 3 Liquigas riders in the breakaway. The other 2, Alexander Kuzinski, who rode extremely well the other day in the Ronde van Vlaanderen, and Manuel Quinziato, who also rode well. So the 4 men seem to have made the break. Funnily enough, Roger Hammond's the only one of Cervelo not to have made this selection. Of course, Heinrich Hausler is gone now because of his fall. Apparently he's okay, but we are hearing that Graham Brown also fell, and he apparently has a suspected broken collarbone, and that is really bad luck.
Very tough for Graham Brown, but you've got to take note at what Team Cervelo did. It was obviously a preconceived plan by that team, Phil, because although Roger Hammond did miss the group, they had 7 out of 8 riders in this leading breakaway of 33 before, of course, they lost Fabian Cancellara and Heinrich Hausler. And that's an indication that they came out with a plan to split the race very early on.
Well, you and I know, Paul, we talked to some riders, and the rumour was abounding around the start area that 3 or 4 teams were rumoured to be going straight out of the traps on the attack. Now, maybe those teams were Cervelo, Team Columbia High Road, Rabobank, and Saxo Bank, because they placed a lot of men in this front group.
You had to be very attentive coming out of the town of Deinze this morning, because there was a lot of nervousness in the air, especially amongst the riders. And that's always the case when you get a dangerous race like this, with the danger coming from the wind and the elements. And that's why I think they came out so rapidly. And some fairly big names made the move early on. Tom Bonen, I thought, was an ideal man. But Bonen was completely isolated. He didn't have another teammate who managed to get into that group with him. So maybe Team Quickstep were actually sleeping a little bit at the start.
They must have been. Well, certainly Bonen punctured, of course, but the speed was so fast, he never got back. And some newspaper reports of back from the race are saying he punctured twice, but we've no confirmation. Either way, he's not here. But back with the field at the moment. Fabian Cancellara off to the right, having a little chat there with Mark Cavendish. No interest in chasing. They've got their teammates up front. They'll happily leave it at that. Cofidis here have got no choice but to do a little bit of work, because they're a team from northern France. They're not far away from where they're based, and they've got nobody up front.
Well, Fabian Cancellara trying to fight his way back from, first of all, a nasty virus that he had in the Amgen Tour of California. That was followed up by a training accident. He's not had a very nice start to the season, but now he's hoping to try and find a little bit of form to try and get up there for Paris-Roubaix at the weekend, a race that he's won in the past.
Well, at this time of the year, when the weather is dull and drab in Belgium, it is quite miserable. You can see the riders are covered in the mud of the day as well here as they course on these roads. They often change some smooth tarmac to strips of concrete, which is not very good. And then they go on to cobbled pave, the stones which create the atmosphere of racing in this area here in Flanders. Interest swings after Paris-Roubaix to the other side of Belgium, of course, and just into Holland for the Amstel Gold Race and Liège-Bastogne-Liège, the Flèche Wallonne. This is the period all the world's best cyclists all conglomerate here in Belgium and France and Holland.
2 different kinds of classic campaigns. These ones, the Flandrian Classics, Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix, completely different to the Ardennes Classics, and different riders come to form at different times to participate in those. It's the first time once you get to the Ardennes Classics that you start to see the Tour de France contenders starting to come out and show whether they've got the form to reproduce some of the glory in the month of July. On the left-hand side there, at 76 kilometres to go, you've got the leading group of riders getting themselves ready now for the attack of the Kemmelberg. On the right-hand side, or full screen now, is the remnants of the main field, and they're in excess now, Phil, of 4 minutes. And looking at the way they're riding here, I don't think they're going to get themselves back into this race at all. It's all, as they say in Flemish, alles gedaan. Everything's done.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Paul, looking at those pictures. These are the face of riders who are already lost. They're already finished in this event. And they're allowing Cofidis to do all of the pacemaking. They've got nobody up front, so they're going to have to keep the pace level. But this isn't a chase. This is sort of honouring the fact that they've got no one up front. They're just setting a tempo here. Look at the gap. It's going up now. 4:17, 76 kilometres to go. If there was anybody to chase, that gap is quite closable, but I don't think there is.
I don't think anybody's going to go to the front. These guys now, I think, are resigned to the fact that what they've got to do is just get themselves to the finish line and get this race over and done with. But despite the fact that there's no serious chase, you can't take anything away from the fact that the first 2 hours of this race were absolutely phenomenal. The race, on certain occasions, was shredded to pieces. And another rumour coming from the start line was, in fact, that Mark Cavendish, after his crash, after his puncture, had a very difficult time getting himself back into the main field. So fast was the pressure in the peloton.
use the crosswinds for the strong riders. That's the best element of the weather, is the crosswind, because it rips off the weakest riders, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, that's a huge escape. 35 riders initially, and then they lose a couple with problems, but there's the breakaway, and that is a lot of riders down there, which means a lot of the guys at the back are not contributing to the escape here. They're probably waiting until the climb of the Kemmelberg first time, and then we'll see how strong they are.
Well, that's what I think is going to happen. Once we get to the Kemmelberg, the guys who are feeling strong will try and split this group into two halves, because there are too many passengers there. A little bit like a sandbag at the bottom end of a hot air balloon, and they want to get rid of those riders if they can, and they know the ideal position to do that is on the slopes of the Kemmelberg, drop down the other side, and then start to organise a good working group at the front.
Just steady tempo riding as well by the breakaway, but this is all the time increasing the gap up to 4:16 at 75 kilometres from the Ankomst, the finishing line. Everybody willing to work a bit and bit here. I think this is Matthew Goss, I think, going through at the moment.
Matty Goss making himself fairly present at the front end of the main field. And these riders now, Phil, are just riding at a steady tempo because they know what is on the horizon for them. They know they've got the Monteberg, they know they've got the Kemmelberg, and that's what is going to be the next most important strategic point of this bike race here this afternoon. And in the back of their minds, all of these guys know that. That looks like Servais Carnarvon over on the right-hand side. Seasoned campaigner, and he will have known exactly where to place himself in the first 2 kilometres of this race to make sure that he didn't miss the split.
Well, because of the conditions, because of it being Belgium, the Belgian riders have always, over the years, certainly dominated the overall standings. Only 13 nations have ever won this event, including Spain with a first-time win last year by Oscar Freire. But of the 71 editions we've had, the Belgian riders have won it 46 times. But they're a little bit thin on the ground. They haven't won it, funny enough, Paul, since that controversial finish by Nico Matan in 2005.
This is the little town of Westhouten. This left-hand turn now takes the riders on the road that will take them up to the summit of the Mont Noir, Mont Rouge. And in fact, we're not very far away from the French border. If you go to the top of this climb and turn to the right, you'll go across into France. Robbie Mcewen, sitting on the front here, is announcing to us before the start that this was what he was going to look for here this afternoon. And he's riding at the front for one solid reason. He wants to make sure that if there is any flurry of attacks, he's always going to be there with it.
Well, the Norwegian flags are flying. Well, they won the last Belgian semi-classic, the Het Nieuwsblad, Ghent, with Thor Hushoft, who has won this race in the past in 2006 and is in this breakaway. So the flags will fly proudly at the moment.
I still have a hard time accepting that name change from the great race Ghent to Ghent. For so many years it was known as the Het Volk, and Het Volk was bought out by the Het Nieuwsblad. So they still own the same newspaper, and I would have felt that they could have left that name associated with the great race. It was so synonymous with the event, and could have kept the name Het Nieuwsblad associated with, of course, the Ronde van Vlaanderen. But it's all down to pounds, shillings and pence, I suppose.
4:16, Boyce and Hagen on the front. This is Kaczynski going through and working. Those calling, keeping it all nice and steady. A little bit of a let's keep it going round in circles indicated there. Let's work together for the breakaway, and hopefully no attacks coming first time up.
Well, I don't think there will be any serious moves until we get to the Kemmelberg, but you can almost start to feel that little bit of nervousness in these riders now as they make their way through the forest, going up towards the top of the Black Mountain. And the men in black this year on the squad have certainly been Team Cervelo. When I saw the jerseys in the first couple of races, I wasn't quite convinced that I liked them. But when you see a solid block of their team riding at the front end of the main field, it must really let a little bit of panic go through the rest of the peloton. Well, this is a slightly new road. They're in fact not going up the main road, which is over towards the right-hand side. They turned left in the small town of Westhouten and are now taking a slightly steeper climb up to the summit of the Mont Noir.
An area Paul Sherwin's known well since his classic racing days. We're getting a bit far away now, really, aren't they, Paul?
They are certainly getting a long way. It's hard to believe it's over almost 25 years since I retired from the sport of professional cycling. But when you get into a position like this and you're looking at these races, races like the Tour of Flanders, Ghent, Wevelgem, Paris-Roubaix, I have to tell you, Phil, the excitement is still there.
Still there, and the guys always willing to do these classes because they get so much on television that the public themselves know all of the names. It's a lot of pressure on the Belgian riders, that's for sure, and not too far away to the French riders and the Dutch riders. But another little tactic here is that if it's a very narrow road and you're not very good at climbing, then get to the front and you can slow it down, because who's going to pass you?
And that's why Robbie Mcewen moves straight up to the front. That's Bradley Wiggins over on the left-hand side with the orange shoulders on his jersey. Three-time Olympic gold medalist and winner just the other day of a very good time trial in the 3 days of La Panne. He has said that he wants to move away from track cycling over the next couple of years before the Olympic Games in London in 2012 and concentrate on a proper road career. And he has absolutely all the abilities to have the performances of the great Chris Boardman of Great Britain a few years ago.
Well, Chris, of course, is one of his mentors. And just looking here at him, I'm trying to see if there's any marks on him, because it was reported he also has fallen. But I don't see any ripped clothing. But he's been down today very early on when they were all anxious to grab wheels. One or two guys went down.
Well, there's the left-hand turn back onto the main road. Over on the right-hand side is the old windmill that the race used to actually circumnavigate. They're not too far away from the top here, Phil, of the Mont Noir. They go over the top and drop down the Mont Rouge, and then down into the small town of Loder, and then they will look for the Monteberg, followed immediately by the Kemmelberg.
It took a long time indeed to get this breakaway going. For a long way it was a dramatic pursuit, a bunch chasing the breakaway and just a few seconds splitting them. And even now there's no real big gains. In fact, to be reversed slightly here, 4:16. So they're riding at the same pace back here in the main field, but nobody helping Cofidis. They're left to do all of the work. It looks as though Quick-Step are beginning to gang up as well, and Lamprey, because they've got nobody in that breakaway, they're also moving to the front. Cancellara off to the left. He's happy to just see how it pans out, and that's the way it goes.
Just getting his head into the action there. I just noticed Tom Bonen riding in about a 5th or 6th position. Fabian Cancellara just over on the left-hand side. But still, I don't believe that Team Quick-Step, Phil, will come and use all the effort and energy to try and bridge this 4 minutes, 15 seconds. They know they've got a massive rendezvous at the weekend. They won the last classic at the Ronde van Vlaanderen, and they're thinking forward to try and win, of course, Paris-Roubaix on Sunday. Wiggins looking very comfortable here, isn't he, in Ghent Wevelgem this afternoon?
Well, he's been honoured twice by the Queen for his performances at Olympic Games and World Championships on the track. He's a multi-medalist in both World Championships on the track and at the Olympic Games, and part of that extraordinary British performance in Beijing last year.
Second place there is Servais Carnarvon, a very clever bike rider, and his crafty tactics a few years ago managed to earn him a victory in Paris-Roubaix. And he's won stages in the Tour de France previously as well. And I remember one of those into the city of Bordeaux. This is the drop down over the Mont Rouge, the Rodeberg. A right-hand turn at the bottom. It's as if it was yesterday, Phil, that I was riding these roads. We used to come out here when I lived in Lille and ride these roads for training, but not usually on days like this.
Well, hopefully not anyway, because it's not just, it is actually quite cold, and the riders are wearing long fingered gloves at the moment. I don't blame them. They've put the extra jersey on as well. And you can see by the way they're taking these corners, they're treating the roads with respect, because they're likely to be a little bit greasy right now.
Well, with the weather conditions as they are, a lot of riders will be riding their tyres just a little bit softer to make sure they've got plenty of adherence going around those corners. They will check the tyre pressures before the start of the day, especially if they think it's going to be a long, wet day. On a dry day, you'll pump the tyres up to maybe 100 or 110 pounds per square inch. But on a day like this, you're probably only going to ride them at 70 to 75 psi.
Well, the gap continues to come down. It's all by this steady pacemaking, but we're not talking a big rush at the breakaway, are we? They've knocked off 7 seconds. We're down to 4 minutes 10 now. It's all going to be down to what happens on the first ascent of the Kemmelberg. If the gap comes down significantly after the climb, then they're going to sense we might have a chance here, and I think they'll chase. But if it doesn't, then I think they'll get a little bit disappointed with themselves.
Well, I believe that that group of riders at the moment is just also riding a steady tempo, and they will start to accelerate themselves once they get closer to the older Quaremont. There's actually not very many bike riders in this group of the peloton, I would say, Phil. That's not very many more than maybe about 40 bike riders left here.
I think that initial surge that came out around the coast, as the riders came nearer towards Ghent and Wevelgem, they've swung off the course, because this is the main field, and it's you're right, I don't think there's much more than 30 riders here.
Well, there won't be many left, I don't think, once we get down to the finishing line in Wevelgem.
Cofidis still riding on the front end of the main field, tapping out a fairly comfortable rhythm, I think, for everybody else. This, to me, doesn't look like a group that's going to find the energy or find the excitement, actually, to chase, because at the end of the day, who is going to chase? Who is going to take all of that energy to bridge the gap when there are so many big teams represented in the front, and there's a big rendezvous coming up on Sunday? So I can't really complain about the tempo that these riders are setting, although having said that, it has come down to 4 minutes and 8 seconds as the leading group now goes through this town of Loker.
This will be the crucial moment now that's going to come on the climb of the Kemmel. This is Loker, then we head down towards Kemmel, up the climb of the berg itself. Big crowd waiting there. It's a good vantage point, of course. They climb it twice. You can watch television on the top as well, because you've got no chance of getting back to Wevelgem in time to see the finish there.
Well, as they drop away from the small town of Loker, the next thing on the horizon is the Monteberg. It's a small climb, but it will give us a first indication of who has got the good legs in this group to keep themselves at the front end of the main field. That's Marcus Burkhardt at the front. He knows exactly how to ride this race. He's won it on a previous occasion.
Well, there's the tribute to the two world wars, which abound here all over the killing fields of Belgium and northern France. So what a sad occasion that was as the peloton come through now, the 71st Ghent Wevelgem. This race actually starting back in 1934 between the two world wars.
There were some massive battles in the First World War in this part of the world. Sometimes thousands and thousands of men died just for the sake of 50 to 100 metres gain or loss.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, I reckon 69 kilometres to go. 4 minutes. They're riding about 3 and a bit kilometres ahead of the chase group. So it's, you can see it's still in with a chance of closing that gap down.
Matty Goss at the back there. And he will need to move up to the front end of the main field. 3 riders from Rabobank in this leading group. And they were very attentive at the start. But their big man, of course, Graham Brown, going down in a very nasty crash. And Juan Antonio Fletcher, one of the pre-race favourites, I would have to say. He also missed out on that early split.
Burkhardt, Eisel, Boyson, Hagen, Hincapie, all there for Team Columbia, you see. Matthew Gotts and Breschel there for Saxo Bank. Then come the whole clutch of Cervelo riders.
Just looking there at the Kop van de Weegstrijd, the front of the bike race on the left-hand side, and the Aantal 33 is 33 riders in the leading group. Dranouter, and that's just about a kilometre or so away from the Monteberg.
A little bit of picture breakup, can't help that, I'm afraid, with these live pictures, but I think they're holding pretty well considering the overcast conditions and the cold weather. Robbie Mcewen doing a lot of work on the front here. He said at the start, he said, I'm not riding this race like a sprinter today because I know it's going to split up, and so I'm going to ride at the front in the first 30 riders because it's going to split, and he was absolutely correct.
Moving up there in the yellow jersey of Columbia High Road and the dark glasses, that is George Hincapie. So he now, Phil, is also starting to be that little bit more attentive. He knows how important it is to be at the front end of the bike race once you get to the Kemmelberg. Now, a slightly different approach to the Kemmelberg these days, because instead of going over the top of the Monteberg and straight to the Kemmelberg, they do a little circuitous route and come back, and they have a right-hand bend into the start of the Kemmelberg climb itself.
This is a smooth road climb, Monteberg. For these boys, it's not a steep climb, but it is a chance to hurt a few people if you want to. But again, looks like Mcewen is controlling the head of the peloton here, and that's a wise move.
Well, in fact, Team Katusha have got another rider in that leading group who could be the replacement sprinter, if you like, because Danilo Napolitano is in the group. I saw him sitting at the back a few moments ago, so he could be the joker in the pack for Robbie Mcewen. But Robbie will be very attentive here, Phil, because he knows he's going to have a hard time getting over the Kemmelberg, and he will try, I think, to go around that first corner in the first 5 positions and hope that he can survive and get over the top on the back end of the split, because I'm decided that there will be a split here, Phil, in this group. It's too big a group at 33.
Yeah, a lot of riders are sat here at the back too. I must say it's the way the world is these days. There's a number of Australian riders in this breakaway, apart from Mcewen. You've got Brett Lancaster, you've also got Matty Heyman, and sadly you would have had Graham Brown if he hadn't have crashed, and he fell very heavily on his right, or I think it was his right shoulder, and a suspected broken collarbone and possibly some damage to his nose as well.
Yeah, but I have to say we're pretty lucky because there's a lot of Brits in this leading group as well. There's one there on the left-hand side, Bradley Wiggins, but right alongside him there is Jez Hunt, who rides for Team Cervelo Test Team, and I'm very happy to see Jez riding so well. Another Brit up there as well, Dan Lloyd, who rode very well a couple of days ago in the Ronde van Vlaanderen.
In the lead group for an awful long way, and he's settled in very quickly at this level of cycling, that's for sure.
This is the new route that the riders have taken over the last couple of years. Previously, they would have gone straight on there, and they were facing up to probably 2 kilometres to get themselves to the Kemmelberg. They go around this fantastic cycling route here, the Wevelgem in this part of Belgium, and they will come into the town of Kemmelberg before then starting to approach it from the opposite direction. The reason they've done that is to try and make the race just that little bit more safe after some nasty crashes 2 years ago.
As you can see, the gap is now 4 minutes. Are we going to see inside 4 minutes, which will give the chase a little bit of encouragement? Remember, that's only a small peloton trying to get back, and there's only one team seemingly willing to drive it, if drive is the right word right now. These boys are not panicking because there's too many of them. They know there'll be a big tough charge up the Kemmelberg. There might be a reshuffle of the pack over the top, and it depends on the gap over the top whether the race behind will continue to chase or simply fall away from it. Bram Tankink, another strong man, sat at the back of the race here at the moment for Rabobank.
So many teams are represented by different numbers that I think we're going to see a slightly tactical race as well. And if the right combination goes over the top of the Kemmelberg, we could see this group of 33 being reduced to 10 or 15 riders once they get to the summit there. 66 kilometres to go. That's around about 40 miles of racing. That's Jez Hunt in second position there. And it is very good to see him get onto a top team like this. And he's a man who over the years I've always thought is going to come up with a big victory one day or another. Just further back down the road here, this is the main field. They've just tipped inside of the 4-minute mark. They're now also going through the town of Loker. And it's still Cofidis on the front. It's like Nicolas Portal. There's Tom Bonen, the third of the riders in the blue jerseys there of Quick-Step. You can see him keeping himself topped up with energy there, Phil. He knows that he's got to make sure he doesn't dig too deep into his resources this afternoon, because I think Sunday he really wants to win Paris-Roubaix.
Well, as they sit there, they're looking rather sad and bedraggled right now, I have to say, but they've taken it inside those 4 minutes. But the break up front, as we've seen, just picking its way through the narrow streets. It's not really pushing on the pressure either, because they're concerned about the size of the escape as these boys now start the climb of the Monteberg.
Obviously not exactly a massive climb, is it, the Monteberg? Around about 5%, at 640 metres long, but it's the ramp, or the lead up, if you like, to the Kemmelberg. It's Florent Bras riding at the front end of the group for Team Cofidis, a man who's been around for quite a number of years. There's Fabien Cancellara in the white jersey over to the right-hand side. Just trying to get, I think, some decent training miles into his legs here this afternoon after a very difficult start to the year, which almost started perfectly when he won the opening prologue of the Amgen Tour of California.
A little bit more determination here now. Big effort by Brad to cause it, and they're all packing nicely. But virtually all of the riders behind the Cofidis boys have got no interest in chasing. 3:55 the gap right now. And no one really, just keep peeping through that white jersey of Cancellara. Had the most idyllic season last year. He won the Olympic gold medal in the time trial and just had a brilliant season. But he's come out, he was ill in California, having won the prologue back in February, and now he's trying to make his reintegration, as it were, into the top flight. May do a good ride in Paris-Roubaix, because I'm sure that's in the back of his mind after the way he's ridden over these past few years. And Tom Bonen looking for his third win in that classic, which would put his name up in lights.
Cavendish on the left-hand side with the yellow jersey of Columbia. He's not riding any of the big, long classics this year. The team, in fact, persuaded him not to ride Paris-Roubaix because they realise he's facing up to a very long season. He's had great success so far. I mean, if he stopped racing right now, he's had a brilliant season. Of course, with that incredible last-minute burst to win himself Milan-San Remo, making him be the first British rider to win that title since Tommy Simpson.
Yeah, he's the biggest single news story on the world professional circuit just now. He is totally magic. Former world Madison champion, done it twice. Very disappointed with the loss of the Olympic Madison title, where he rode with Bradley Wiggins last year. The only rider on the track squad not to come back with a medal, which is unthinkable when he was coming off 4 victories in Tour de France stages and 2 victories in the Tour of Italy stages.
Well, for Mark Cavendish, he really came away, I think, Phil, from those Olympic Games a disappointed bike rider, but he certainly turned it to rights, because straight after that he went to the Tour of Ireland and was extremely dominant, and backed that up with a dominant performance, of course, in the Tour of Missouri in the United States. So a magical season for Mark Cavendish. Only one little sad note for him, and that was the fact that he didn't get a medal at all at the Olympic Games, as you just said.
Well, at his age, there's a few Olympic Games lying ahead of him. It's up to him, and I think we'll be talking about him a lot. He came out fighting in March, winning the best classic, the first UK rider to win that classic since Tommy Simpson, 45 years earlier. They're the only two British riders ever to have won Milan San Remo.
And I have a feeling with the youth on his side, Mark Cavendish, Phil, is going to win an awful lot more bike races before he gets to the end of his career. The Kop van de Wegstrijden, they're now moving away from Wolverhampton and getting themselves now just that little bit more nervous. You can see the nervousness now in the faces of these riders, because next on the menu this afternoon is the Kemmelberg, or Kemmeltop, as they like to call it in Flemish.
Well, this is the only Silence Lotte rider in the breakaway on the front at the moment. It's Michael Elizen. I did say none of them made it, but he did make it, but he certainly wasn't one of the expected riders on the team. And I think if they had any chasers back there, they would chase and try and catch him, because he's outnumbered here for sure. And the rider on the white, by the way, is the champion of Belarus at the moment, and that is Yohini Hutrajovic, who's he was setting the pace.
Well, he was. He's taken over there by the man from Rabobank, and that was Matty Hayman. 2 kilometres now to the start of the Kemmelberg, which is why they are starting to pick up the pace in this group. Very short. Look at George Hincapie over on the left-hand side. He's just waiting, Phil, for the right moment to accelerate to the front, because Hincapie's got the ability, and I think the form at this time of the year, to in fact create the difference on the Kemmelberg, and he knows it to absolute perfection.
I think you're absolutely right. George said he was going good at the start this morning, and he wouldn't tell you if he didn't feel that he was in fact going good. He's got a smell for these classic races. He always rides well. He's won this race. This was his first big one-day win when he won this race back in 2001, and he's in this group. So I would expect to see George try and make a move first time up and reduce the size of this breaker. It's a little bit unmanageable just now.
Too many passengers, and I think all of the big guns realise that. They're just coming now into the town of Kemmel. Very famous town here because, of course, of the Kemmelberg. But on the descent on the far side, there's a cenotaph to 5,000 soldiers who were massacred in the battle to defend the top of this mountain in the First World War. And the reason they wanted to defend the mountain was it's the highest point in the whole of the surrounding area, and it commanded a great amount of respect for the troops that held it.
Apparently many hundreds of years ago, the Kemmelberg was part of the ocean, and that's why a lot of the region here is sandy. And it's still cobbled. It is very steep. It is about 25%, I think it is, Paul, on the main part of the slope. And because of the weather today, it means you can't really ride out of the saddle. Your wheels are going to spin and you'll likely fall off.
You have to sit down, you have to get to the right gear in. Fortunately for the riders, they're going over, if I may say it, the easiest side of the Kemmelberg. It's fairly smooth to begin with, but it's a nasty climb, because once you start to turn around to the left, once you get nearer the summit, that's when it really kicks in, and that's when it really hurts, and that's how you can make the difference at that point there.
Kemmel, that's the town sign going the other way, unfortunately, for these riders now.
See Hincapie there over on the right. He moved right up to the front. Matty Goss as well. But Robbie Mcewen there with the gold and green bands, a former Australian national champion on his jersey there, looks very concentrated at this point of the game. He knows what he wants to do. He wants to get himself around that corner. He'd probably sprint for it like he would for a stage finish.
Well, the boys in black are in the wrong position just now. The Cervelo boys, they've slipped down to the right. The roads are narrow, of course. There's no passing opportunity. That's why Mcewen has placed himself well. The master tactician, Kuzinski, is in the middle of our camera here. Wiggins is positioned very well off to the right for Garmin Slipstream.
I think one of the most dangerous riders in this Group 4 Liquigas, of course, is Manuel Quinziato. He's a rider who really has flourished over the last 2 seasons, and he will be hoping that he gets himself over the top of the Kemmelberg in a good position.
You can feel the nerves settling in here, can't you? Just look at the way they're trying to hold position now.
Oh, certainly. They're not too far away. This is the long drag up to the left-hand turn, and it's still Bradley Wiggins is right on the front end of this, and there's the corner now.
Here we go. I once made that corner and fell off immediately on the left. I never even got off the bike. The crowd literally picked me up and put me back on the bike.
Yeah, just a little bit slip, isn't it? Average gradient 6% to 18.7% right up to the top. That's a very clever move over on the right-hand side. That's Marcus Burkhardt. Hincapie in the middle, sitting on the wheel of the Liquigas rider. Matty Hagen not too far away, but this is a great acceleration by Burkhardt.
Well, Burkhardt is giving it some stick as he starts to climb. He'll come around a little bend here, then he'll see how steep this climb is as he drives towards the summit, but that is Kaczynski trying to reach him. And it looks as though we've got other riders from Rabobank. Tanking is there as well, trying to get across. That's Bajayev of the on the right of the road there for Astana, wearing the champion of Kazakhstan's jersey there.
Well, Hincapie actually slipping back a fraction there and allowing the gap to go, and just sitting down. You see how all of these riders are sitting far back on their bikes, keeping the pedals nicely ticking over. Two riders from Colombia there. The second rider going around, Edvald Boasson Hagen, probably taking a lot of advice from George Hincapie. Hincapie's probably saying to him, look, don't panic. I know this climb. Those guys aren't going anywhere at all. If we need to, I can accelerate and I can drag you across to this crew. But look at Burkhardt. Little jump of the gears there. This is the steepest part. You can see the difference, Phil, in the pedaling action.
He's pulling his front wheel literally off the road there.
Yep. You really have to dig deep at this point. The crowd get a great chance to see the race here on two occasions. You can see the acceleration coming from Matty Goss there. Well, Boasson Hagen there. There is Bradley Wiggins. He started the climb right at the front. I'm looking to see where Robbie Mcewen is. I think he must have gone through. I missed him.
Well, it's not his climb, of course. It's a different riding style, and the Cervelo boys are in trouble here at the back just now. This is the end of the breakaway.
Well, these are the guys who absolutely started this bike race. They blew it apart, and now I think they're starting to pay for all of the effort they put in over the first 2 hours.
Well, as they continue to go up the climb here, they're trying to form a little breakaway. I don't think it's quite split as much as they had hoped here. Kaczynski on the front. Now it's a change of direction. Normally it was straight on down the cobbles, much easier descent.
59 kilometres to go, but did you see how clever and crafty George Hincapie was? He waited for all the other riders to come back and he used them to bridge the gap, and he's up there with his teammate. 3 riders from Colombia in what looks like a 15-man split at the moment, but you're right, it hasn't really had the effect that I expected. Certainly it's going to happen next time around.
Spanish Basque flag strapped to the tree there. Well, they've got Fernandez to cheer on in the orange jersey of Euskaltel Euskadi as we disappear through the spring bursting woods here. Just look at the front wheel here at Burkhardt. I mean, you have to ride a different style. You have to ride more like a mountain biker where you distribute your weight in a different direction. Otherwise, your bike simply bites you.
He's absolutely battling with his machine there. Acceleration from Matty Goss, just ahead of George Hincapie. Now from the helicopter, we get a chance to see just what sort of damage has been done by the first ascent of the famous Mont Kemmelberg.
Is this the back of the front? It might be the end of this. Is Dan Lloyd, I think, as he goes down the trees. He's last man, I think, at the moment of the break.
Yeah, the 3 riders from Cervelo test team, they just popped once they hit the Kemmelberg there.
Oh.
Well, they're saying it's with grab, so I'm pretty certain before that I saw that it was Dan Lloyd. Anyway, we'll get in a little while and check that out.
I prefer it to be Gabriel Rasch. Not that
I'm
I'm
sure
biased,
you would.
but
Now, there's a lot of riders still there, and in fact it hasn't had much damage. There's a rider getting straight back on there from Cervelo test team.
Just note the peloton there is still closing at 3:42. It's how they come up that climb, whether they consolidate that or lose ground. Matty Hagen driving through. He's being chased here by the Lotte rider, Elizen. Here's the peloton as they hit the town. Looks like Tom Bonen is on the front.
Well, a little bit of a demonstration, I think, by Tom Bonen, just to show everybody else that he's one of the best cobblestone riders in the world. But nice to see up alongside him Mark Cavendish there.
Yeah, you know, Mark is making a big effort to develop himself now as an all-rounder and not just a pure sprinter. To win races, of course, you have to be there at the finish. And sometimes the sprinters lose out on roads like this. So I think he's doing a little bit of his own personal training right now.
Well, he's learning these races. He's learning how to handle them. He's looking at men like Tom Bonen on the left-hand side to see what sort of pressure and what sort of speed you have to tackle these cobblestone climbs with.
He's certainly not in any trouble here as he rides alongside the man who's a 2-time winner of the Tour de France, a 2-time winner of Paris-Roubaix. Both of those races littered with cobblestones. He is yet to win this race, and I have to say it's not going to be today right now for Tom.
No, he's still looking to try and make up 3 minutes and 46 seconds. Well, Race Radio just saying that it was Dan Lloyd who was dropped off the back on the cobblestone section there, but if they slow down a fraction at the front, he has also still got a chance, Phil, of reintegrating the front end of the race. But we're not looking at too many dedicated men there. They're just, I think, going to call it a day in Ghent Wevelgem here this afternoon. Just get themselves to the little town not too far away from the French border.
So Tom stamping his authority here on what's left of the Ghent Wevelgem race today. Same size as the front group, I think, this little group here. They're splitting up. Now, they may get another group going. The gap is, well, it's not going anywhere, frankly. It's at 3:48 as they come up towards the summit, which means that they really should have been seen to close at this point.
There's no energy, I don't think, there. I just noticed Fabian Cancellara going through, trying to find himself a little bit of form in the early part of this season. And this is the steepest part of the Kemmelberg now. I don't really think there's one team in this group at the back end of the main field, Phil, who've got the dedication or want to make the effort to pull back that breakaway, because most of the big names that are represented in the front group have also got teammates in the back.
58 kilometres left now as they come over. They make the left turn here. They've pulled away a little group, and hats off to Mark Cavendish. That's a fine piece of riding here. Done nothing, of course, to damage the lead where he's got teammates up front, but he's made a little notice of intent there. He's good, and he's got to climb it once more yet. Gone back out now. It's 4 minutes, so for me that is definitely the end of the race for these guys.
Kurt Adler Arvidsson just going through there, the Norwegian national champion. And you see Fabian Cancellara precariously getting around this corner. Previously, in years gone by, the race went straight on at the top of the climb and descended a cobblestone climb that was at 25%. And it was such a nasty cobblestone climb that these guys going down at 60 kilometres an hour could hardly see straight. Their eyeballs were bouncing up and down in the back of the cranium. There's a move at the front.
This looks like Kuzinski. Yes, Kuzinski making a move here. He's got terrific form, this man, at the moment. Virtually won virtually no races in Europe, but he's won a few back home.
I noticed George Hincapie had seen that as a dangerous move. He's in that small group of 4 riders now trying to make the junction at the front. And this could be the first serious move. It's always very strange when you're expecting the move to go on the Kemmelberg.
Absolutely.
It usually goes afterwards.
Absolutely. I was just thinking that because nobody went on the Kemmelberg. The bunch did climb it all together, all 33 riders. But now they've relaxed a little bit. This is a very difficult break to read because riders are sprinting across to join the leaders. This could well result in a front group.
Well, one man missing out on this is Robbie Mcewen, because I've noticed Hincapie has got across the gap there. There's another group of 3 or 4 riders trying to bridge. Look at Hincapie there.
Kuzinski's going there, and it looks to me as though I've got Hincapie driving up towards him, so he's reading the move well. He's expecting a break to go at this moment. So Hincapie for Columbia High Road is crossing the gap. There's still plenty of fight back here.
There's plenty of fight back, but it's scrambling back to make the junction. Hincapie looks back there to see what sort of damage has been done. Now, if he's got the power in his legs, he'll come straight past Kuzinski.
Heyman.
And he's looking back. He says, no, it's not going to work this time.
Heyman's there. The skill rider is Cyril Lemoine, and he's going to have a little dig as he swings off to the right. Now, this is the end of the breakaway right now. Is this Dan Lloyd rejoining?
Well, they're suffering a lot, the men in black here this afternoon. That looks like a mechanical incident for the one rider going backwards there.
Not a good time to have it. That's a little bit of a shame.
It was Gabriel Ratch, number 187, getting himself onto the back end of the group. And this is a good move because Skill Shimano is not one of the big teams on the international circuit. It's a wild card team. And this rider, Phil, is taking the advantage that maybe there'll be a little bit of marking amongst the big teams and he'll be able to open himself up a lead of 20 or 30 seconds.
Well, they had 2 riders in this breakaway, and this is Cyril Lemoine. He's the guy with the best form just now. He's had his name in lights this year as he now continues to push on to see who's going to join him. And that's got to be Fernandez coming across because he's the only one from Euskaltel Euskadi.
It's not a team that we normally expect to see riding well in the difficult classics in the northern part of Europe. They're a team that normally excel in the big mountains, of course, of the Giro d'Italia, Tour de France and the Vuelta a España. But this man here is making a great move and he's scrambling across the gap. And you see the group there, Phil, they've just spread out across the road. I think they're going to give these two a little bit of freedom, or not.
I think it's or not, to be honest, because there's a counter move going here. Kuzinski's in it again in that lime green jersey. Here comes Fernandez. So Lemoine and Fernandez have now got themselves up and forget the peloton at 4:05. This is the race for sure now, and these boys probably know it. We have this big circuit now over the same little foothills again, and back over the Kemmelberg, and then next time we race for home.
Oh, look how hard that is. You can see
Isn't
everybody struggling to go. This is a nice move there, just going over on the right-hand side. That's Bram Tankink.
Another one of the strong men, and Bram has been spending a little bit of time in the caboose at the back there, waiting for a chance to attack. Now he's decided today is the day, this is the moment, 55 kilometres to go.
Well, it really is an indication of how tough the first 3 hours of racing has been, Phil, because it's very difficult to get across these gaps. You see these riders paying attention, making sure that they don't miss a move and trying to get across as quickly as possible.
Dominique Rollin has just gone for Cervelo. The rest of the Cervelos are here, including the winner, Thor Hushovd of 2006, just saw him. That looks like Hincapie's going again, and he's picked up another passenger with Matthew Heyman's hook. I think that's Matty Heyman's got on the back there.
And Matty Goss as well, to make it just a little bit more complicated. Trying to jump across now for Astana is Azan Bazayev, the national champion of Kazakhstan, and he's seen that as being a very dangerous move. He will keep a close eye on George Hincapie.
Now this is interesting now, because as riders get teammates into that split, they're going to stop the chase and allow the race to go to see who will chase it down. And they've sat up because the Lotto rider here who has locked up is Eliza. And have we seen the end of the sprints to the break? Or there's Chris Sutton, number 118, and he's going to have a go.
Well, he's seen that as a dangerous move, and he's using his sprinting ability to try and accelerate across the gap. They're all now starting to see that, strangely enough, the breakaway is forming in between the two ascents of the Kemmelberg. This is Fernandez on the front. He realises when you make the move like this, you've got to keep the hammer down for a little while and hope that you're going to get some reinforcements from behind while we get confirmation. The main field is still continuing to lose a little bit of time, 4 minutes and 20 seconds back to the peloton.
Fernandez claim to fame this year won a stage of the Tour de Algarve, which is a February race in Portugal. Very nice conditions at this time of the year in Portugal, and he also held the race lead just for the one day before he slipped away. But we'll see now. He's obviously got a good set of legs here for the early season. I'm not sure he liked the weather quite so much.
It's a serious split coming on now. These two riders are being chased by a larger group now. Now, once they catch these two leaders, because I'm certain that they will, we may well see the changing face of this race. And anybody who's been caught out now will be kicking themselves. And if they want to win Ghent Wevelgem, I think they need to make a move right now.
So the Spanish rider driving the French rider at the front here. Fernandez, by the way, started out life as the national junior champion of his country. That's how he made his way into the professional ranks back in 1999. He's 27 now. That group is going to sweep them up, but it's not the whole breakaway.
Well, this is the right-hand turn now where they will drop down into the town of Westouter. That's in about 1.5 kilometres time, and that's when they'll come up the Zwarteberg one more time. Now, that is a very serious split, and you see how all of a sudden it's closed down behind there, and there's nobody chasing.
Well, I make that 13 riders. The Baker's dozen going clear there. Fernandez is there, certainly. Tankink we saw go across. Chris Sutton has gone across. Kuzinski has certainly gone across. I'm sure Hincapie went as well. And Dominique Rollin, we can't give you any more just yet till we get in there.
A little bit difficult from 1,500 feet when you look down on a bike race like this, and especially in these weather conditions. But certainly I did see George Hincapie move across the gap there. There, in fact, is George Hincapie at the back of that group there in the yellow jersey of Columbia High Road.
And look how the gap on the peloton has gone back out to 4:20 now. They've gained 20 seconds since this reaction, which means it's probably curtains back in the main field for what's left of it now. As that's the descending style of Robbie Mcewen, is it or not?
Yeah, this is the second group on the road, and Mcewen has realised the fact that he's missed out here. He's getting down into a very precarious tuck position at the front end of this pack, and he's trying to whip up the pacemaking to see whether or not he can get any help from other riders in this group.
Remember, still we've got to go round to the Kemmel again. If you go round with a break, then they could prise open the gap here, and that is what they're looking for. Cervelo boys are now going to the back here, but they've only got one rider in this break as far as I can see, and that's the Canadian Rollin. This is Bazayev, the champion of Astana, on the front. Bram Tankink is here along with his teammate Matty Heyman. Fernandez is here. I thought I saw the champion of Belarus there too, so that'll be Hutsarovic is in the breakaway as well.
Well, that gap fill has gone almost immediately to 25 seconds there as they get into Westouter. This is the leading group. This is the second group on the road, sorry. You can see two riders in this group from Colombia. Robbie Mcewen just over there on the left hand in the blue shorts, and no organisation at all now. And it's really up to Katusha to try and do the pacemaking if they want to keep Robbie in with a chance. Matty Hagen, number 3.
Yeah, well, I thought he was in the breakaway, so perhaps this is not the case at the moment. He must be back in the bunch there.
In fact, if they don't make a reaction very shortly, the next time check we're going to get is going to be up to 30 or 40 seconds. This is the small town of West Outer, across the little cobblestone town square before they face up to the left-hand turn, which takes them onto that very long, nasty climb to the summit of the Monteberg.
Well, these are all the names for us now. In fact, it's his teammate, Hagen's teammate Lisa, who's got into the breakaway. There's Goss in there, Breschel is there, man that started it, Lemoine is up there as well. So Rabobank have got themselves 2 riders up here just now. Breschel, a former winner, is here. So too is Hincapie, a former winner. And this is the head of it now. And Liquigas have got 2 riders here.
Bram Tankink is the man on the front for Team Rabobank. The little sign there from his hand was an indication, come on, we've got the split that we wanted. We didn't want too many riders in this breakaway. Let's all start to share the pacemaking. 30 seconds.
Still 13 riders going clear. That's a very workmanlike group now. As the camera pulls back, it's opening up. How surprising is that? Going on over the top of the hill. Psychologically a good time to go. The active Olgas, these are the chasers here now, trying to do something about it. Mcewen is here. I don't think Paul any longer is his teammate. We've never seen him the whole race. I have a feeling the Palatano has gone.
He may well have done. Mcewen accelerating here, and in fact they're letting Mcewen go here, Phil, as he starts the early slopes of this climb of the day. And Mcewen, I think, may well try and take this advantage, because he will know that that group of 13 riders in front at 30 seconds is very dangerous as we head back down to the Monteberg and, of course, the Kemmel.
But look what the break has done to the peloton. It's now 5:55. In no time at all, they've just gone into the distance. So it's all over back there. Now, this is interesting. Is this Robbie the climber instead of the sprinter?
Well, he told you before the start, I'm not going to ride this bike race like a sprinter here this afternoon. I'm going to ride this race to win it. I'm going to look for the splits. He's seen that split and he realises it is a dangerous split, especially when we're facing up to a couple of climbs. And well, I'll take my hat off to Robbie Mcewen. He's seen the danger of that move. I mean, when you've got guys like George Hincapie in that breakaway, Bram Tankink, Mcewen says, right, I'm not going to lose Ghent Wevelgem this year. I really want to win the race of the sprinters, Ghent Wevelgem.
2 wins for him this year, very early on. Nothing from him since. He's come up against Mark Cavendish, I'm afraid, and it's cost him dearly. A couple of second places to Cavendish. But here he has, showing his maturity. He read the move today where Cavendish had the bad luck to puncture when it was all happening. And now Mcewen is deciding, knowing he's the fastest rider up here, he's gone for the breakaway. So, yep, take your hat off to him now. He's got a gap.
Well, I'm surprised that they've actually just let Robbie Mcewen ride off the front of that group. There's no reaction at all in the group that Robbie Mcewen has just left, and Robbie's realised that there's probably a lot of spent forces in the second half of this split now, and he realises this is where he wants to be, and he's going to have to get himself across before the top of this climb. It looked to me as if Roland from Cervelo Test Team, Phil, was having a little bit of problem at the back there.
Just thinking of Mcewen's fantastic honours list, you know, he's not far short of winning 200 professional races. I think he's the most successful rider currently racing on the pro circuit now, with the retirement of Eric Zabel, who incidentally is the sprint advisor for Mark Cavendish on Columbia High Road and is on the race today. And so he won't give any advice to Mcewen, who is deciding it's now or never. He's looked over his shoulder. There is nobody coming up to him. He's committed now and he's in no man's land.
Well, he's done a very good ride to move away from that group, and he's obviously concentrating very much on trying to make the connection at the front. If these guys, now that they're on the flatter part at the top of the climb, start to accelerate, then Robbie Mcewen will not get back onto this group. He's got to try and get there before we get to the Monteberg.
So the first shake out of the breakaway. Kuzinski now stamping on the pedals on the front, Tankink tucked in behind him. Very much a more workmanlike group now, because they've made their attack, they've got their chance and they're not going to let it go. Bazayev, the champion of Astana, champion of Kazakhstan rather, the Astana sponsored team, sponsored by the Kazakhstan government, as they now he's the only representative here. The other national champion is Yevgeny Hutrovich he rides with French team Francais de Jeu, but he is the champion of Belarus.
This is now the Rodeberg, a climb of 2 kilometers. The top part is fairly steep at 16%.
Just round the corner, Paul.
Yeah, it's still going to be a pretty hard ride for Robbie Mcewen because there's 13 riders at the front there, and he's trying to ride across the gap on his own. And Robbie's not used to this kind of effort, but obviously today he's got some super motivation. Well, I'll actually correct myself because you're right. There is the neutral service car at about 200 meters.
And there's the crowd, and he's a very, very popular man here in Belgium. He's often used on television adverts. He's on the placards of all advertising boards here. He lives in this country, a town called Brakel, not too far away from where we are right now. And he's married to Angelique, who is from Belgium. So Robbie's part of the family here.
And of course, let's not forget Robbie is completely fluent in the Flemish language, which is why the Belgian television always try and get an interview with him at the start or the finish of many of these races.
But if you were to win now, then you would say this wasn't a sprint win. This was the win by a very, very good, mature, all-round pro.
Hincapie just over on the right-hand side in the yellow. He must be very happy with the way this has developed. He did what he felt that he needed to. In fact, the referees are making what they call the barrage here. They're moving the car out of the gap, and I think that's probably a little bit unfair there for Robbie Mcewen because that leaves that big gap. But, you know, he's actually closing this gap down, getting himself into that precarious, low-profile position. He's looking for about 5 or 6 seconds, and the way Robbie goes around the corner, he won't be far off the back of them when they take this right-hander.
An ex-BMX rider, that's how he started life. He's now facing up here to his, I think it's his 16th season as a pro, which is amazing length of time, twice the average. He's round the corner. He's going to be almost on them when he comes off this bend. Good rows to get the bridge, and he needs to get on quickly before we hit the camel.
Well, he's done it now.
That's
He's
amazing.
got them in his sights, and, you know, he halved that deficit, Phil, just going around that one corner. He is a brilliant bike rider, and I tell you one thing, at the top of some of the big mountains and the mountain top finishes in the Tour de France, he's not averse to pulling a good wheelie for the crowd.
Well done, Robbie Mcewen. That's a terrific chase. He finished it off quickly. We've got 14 boys up front now. There on the horizon is the rest of the race. They're slipping away. We've got no time check up at the moment, but it's got to be over half a minute.
Yes, it's still hovering at 31 minutes. A little acceleration again from Kuczynski. You cannot keep this man down this afternoon.
He's a busy man. As I say, he's not won many races away from his native Belarus. But he has won quite a few races there. He's been around the teams, and he finally has got himself a big team here in Liquigas last couple of seasons.
It's a team that will be looking to try and dominate the Giro d'Italia later on in the season with the return to the sport of Ivan Basso. Looking back, they've actually let him go there, and that's not a very clever move.
Somebody
because
hasn't.
Somebody trying to get across the gap. This is once again the town of Loka, and Loka is the gateway to the Monteberg, and then of course after that the Kemmelberg for the last time before tilting away to the east and heading down towards Wevelgem.
46 kilometres to go. One more climb of note, of course, the Kemmel, and then we're on our way to the finish on flat roads with the crosswinds again playing their part. Peloton, I think we can now safely write them off the script. The winner's down there somewhere, but which group is he in? Mcewen reckons he's in the front group, and that's why he's crossed the gap.
Well, a very clever, attentive move by Robbie Mcewen there. He realised that it was pretty much all over behind. There was nobody wanting to come across. And now this is an interesting move to see Matty Goss joining up.
The Australians, Matthew Goss now heading up there as they make their way up towards the second climb of the Kemmelberg. The Australians have never won this, by the way. Henk Vogels, who retired last year, he was second to Andreas Klyer, who is in this front group, but not this particular portion of it, back in 2003.
Well, it's all back together again. That really was because of the pressure from Bram Tankink and George Hincapie there. Hincapie now starting to become that little bit more attentive. Two riders from Team Saxo Bank at the front end of the group. Just looking across there, Bazayev over on the right-hand side. Slowing down like this is not the best thing to do. They've got themselves 45 seconds, but if they prat around like this, they're going to lose a whole chunk of that before they get to the Monteberg.
See, Mcewen's on the back. He's not willing to help now because he's tired from the chase. He was looking over his shoulder to see what's going on. He will sense exactly what you've just said, that these riders need to turn the screw a bit tighter. Otherwise, there's a nice little jumping off ramp on the cobbles of the Kemmelberg.
It certainly is. They need to take advantage of this, and there's a couple of teams with multiple representatives in that leading group, Phil, and they need to make a concerted effort. That is the second half of the split, followed by all of the service cars, and that split is 46 seconds, so it's going in the right direction. But in fact, it's Team Cervelo now who've been caught on the defensive. 4 riders in this group, and it's their responsibility to chase. I think they're having a hard time today. Just looking at Jez Hunt there over on the left-hand side with the red glasses on.
Well, bear in mind they've got Roland in the break, but obviously they're not going to be confident now. Roland is something of a sprinter, but I don't think he's at the level of Robbie Mcewen. But you never know at the end of a hard ride just how good you really are and how good your fellow sprinters are. There's the leading group. That's the chase group at the moment, with all Cervelo on the front, the men in black. In both the men and the women's circuit races this year, Cervelo are having a wonderful start to the season, very reminiscent of Team Columbia High Road last year.
Well, they've got the organisation, but they're actually, despite the fact that they're setting the tempo on the front of this group, Phil, the gap has gone out to 47 seconds. And obviously, because of the fact that they're strong in numbers in the second half of the split, I think they're not going to give the confidence to Dominique Roland. They're not sure that one man in a group of 14 is very good odds.
Bazayev on the front, but not doing a great deal. Mcewen is moving up just a little bit there to second. That's Lemoine in third place. Tankink is there. Lisa is the rider there. Fernandez is the all-orange strip. George Hincapie, he's been quiet since he came up here too.
He's been quiet but very attentive. He's always sitting in the first 4 or 5 places. He got into the move very cleverly. Didn't use too much effort, but just followed the wheels to make sure that he wasn't going to get caught out in the split. This is now the start of the Monteberg for these riders.
Well, when George won his race here, which he won back in 2001, he beat Leon van Bon, who still races, by the way, the Dutchman, on a very small team in Asia, and Peter van Petergem, who has been an absolute star of this region until his retirement, although he never totally excelled in this particular race.
Now, other things on the agenda for him, like the Ronde van Vlaanderen and Paris-Roubaix around the corner now. That's the second part of the race. And I think, Phil, that's a little bit less than the 47 seconds that's being indicated. I would say it's come back down now to around about 30 if we get an official time split, because there are the leaders only just around the corner.
Well, we've got the rain again, as you can see on the camera lens here from the helicopter. It's just a steady drizzle. It's not torrential, but it's dampening and it's chilling. At the moment, the wind won't be a problem. This is Cervelo team time trial here. 5 men are here, and they've got 1 up front.
Well, I'm not sure whether that's a smile or a grimace on the face of Jez Hunt there, who's being pulled to the front to do an awful lot of pacemaking. There's Lemoine on the front for Skill Shimano. Hincapie on the left now, starting to look like he's got the pedalling action of a big day.
You know, this is the wrong combination, Paul, because yes, they have got Dominique Roland. There he is, as Tankink goes again, but he's doing no work, so I think he's actually hoping that that group does catch up. It's the wrong system for them.
Well,
this is Tankink going.
Kuczynski taking over, and then Matty Breschel in the white jersey there. A lot of riders have tipped him to have a good classics campaign here this afternoon. He's being attended, but Hincapie, you're not going to catch him out with a move like this. Hincapie just going around the corner there in 4th.
Yeah, this is to be expected now, to try and stretch them. There's a sense of false security coming in this breakaway, and rightly so. That gap is now 38 seconds. When this breakaway should have gone, it doesn't look as though it's going to go clear until we get onto the slopes of the Kemmelberg, and that's why Tankink has made a move.
Well, there's going to be a showdown, I think, this time, Phil, once we get to the Kemmelberg. This has been an incredibly difficult race right from the very word go. Everyone has gone out on the attack, and most of the pacemaking and most of the early racing was done by Team Cervelo.
37 seconds now, and they're freewheeling again.
Well, they're freewheeling, going slightly downhill for the moment, and they know that they're facing up now to around about 5 kilometres to the Kemmelberg, and if they don't get some organisation at the front of this group, Phil, they will get re-caught by that second half of the split.
Back out onto the wider roads. No big acceleration off that corner. Kuczynski still very active at the front, and riding very quietly in the centre pack is Manuel Quinziato. Could be the big surprise card here for Liquigas.
He certainly could be the dark horse. Bram Tankink realises this is a good opportunity. Looking over his shoulders, he wants to keep the pace nice and high, but nobody really is concertedly going up and helping him to set the pacemaking at the front end of the group, and they're losing their impetus because they've lost a little bit more. Robbie Mcewen, having made that big effort, must be thinking, come on guys, why don't you just drag me to the finish and I can get a victory this afternoon.
Well, if an Italian's going to win this, they will emulate the last Italian to win was Mario Cipollini, the redoubtable sprinter who won in 2002. It's had a variety of winners over the last few years from different nations, and the Belgians have only won this race twice in the last decade. So they need to try and redress that situation as well.
Just checking the gap there. It is still stabilised out at the half-a-minute mark. But the
28.
The tempo there at the front of this group and the fact that they're stretched out into that long line makes me think that these guys are completely and utterly dedicated. That's Hunt in second position.
I think that's Lloyd at the front, but he's so dirty. I'm not sure. I'm not absolutely confident when I say that, but he's driving anyway. Jeremy Hunt there. The face is indicating as he now makes Jeremy Hunt take up the running. Jeremy says, "Why me?" As he now got to drive. So quite clearly they are chasing. And Roland has been told by the race radio from his director sportif not to contribute to that breakaway.
Well, you talked about
Napolitano.
I was just going to say he's popped into the picture now, but he's riding pretty much, Phil, in a defensive role. That gap is still continuing to go downwards, and again, it's less than 27 seconds, I think. Next time we get a time check, it's probably going to be just a little bit closer to 20. Nasty day in the Wevelgem here this afternoon for these riders, and next on the menu, after the aperitif of the first time over the Kemmelberg, they're going to have to go over it one more time. This is the Kop van de Wegstrijd, the front end of the bike race. Robbie Mcewen sitting on the back of the group. But once these guys start to look over their shoulders that, they realise that that group is coming back and they'll lose their morale and they'll stop working together.
They are desperately trying to reach the cobbles of the Kemmelberg, and there they could open the gap. But will they get there? Because at 24 seconds... there's every possibility this group will catch them just as they start that climb, and then that'll give us a whole new combination at the top.
It certainly will, and it's still Team Cervelo test team. You see all the other riders lining up behind them have got riders represented in that front group, so they don't want to do any of the pacemaking at all. There you can see the rider from Liquigas. He's got two men in front. The rider from Katusha in the white jersey, he's got Robbie Mcewen in front, so they're not going to help the guys, the men in black, at all. Well, that's a rather interesting little shot.
Isn't it? I thought I was seeing double there for the rather large team pursuit, but just watching that was Fischer from Liquigas, who's sitting behind. This is our champion from Belarus, Hutrurovic, working very hard in this breakaway. Lemoine on the far right, who started it all, still willing to work here. But I don't know, 19 seconds, that chase by Cervelo. Cervelo must be planning on a win, and I don't know who with, possibly Brett Lancaster maybe, or Andreas Clear, a former winner of this event in 03. They're both in that chase because they lost their big man, Heinrich Hausler. Sadly, he made the split and then apparently crashed soon after.
Pretty chaotic in the first hour of racing. Lots of incidents and accidents going on, and a lot of riders who were in the right place at the right time found themselves being left behind because of mechanical incidents or crashes, as you mentioned, the name of Hausler. This is looking a little bit raggedy now. I notice Hincapie going to the front. He is seeing this as an opportunity. He wants to drag this front split away to the Kemmelberg and hopefully start the Kemmelberg without those riders joining. That prevents any confusion at the front of the pack. And there's a split.
Yes, 18 seconds the gap. I don't think it's going to work now, I'm afraid. They're going to smell them now at 40 kilometres left to ride or 25 miles to go. The same drive is not there. Bazayev, is he going to try and liven them up? He's looking at everybody. He's on his own up here, don't forget. He's got no team. Kuzinski, they've sat up. I don't like this at all now.
Well, they just stopped the neutral service vehicle as well over on the right-hand side, and the reason for that is because the race referees believe it's becoming too close. We're looking at around about 15 seconds, and once they've seen that the service vehicle has been stopped behind them again, they will lose a little bit more impetus, and Kuzinski has decided, bang, this is the time to go again.
Well, it worked for him the last couple of times. Is he going to start the next breakaway? We can see now the benefit of a strong team, and they got so many men up here, all except Roger Hammond, in fact, so Cervelo had the firepower there. Otherwise, there's no doubt that breakaway would have gone. But they had too many strong men left behind.
Well, just going inside of 40 kilometres, 25 miles of racing to go. Bazayev there, he started to go to the front end of the group. But this really, Phil, it wasn't really an attack. It was more of an acceleration.
Well, one of annoyance, I think, to let a winning move slip through your fingers, because I think that's what they've done. And so Kuzinski now is going to try and form the next group.
Well, he's now just in the outskirts of the town of Kemmel. He's going to have the advantage of starting the Kemmelberg in first position. And that avoids any of the confusion of riders a little bit further back who start to slow down or maybe jump their gears as he goes through the town of Kemmel. He's about 1.5 kilometers now to go to the start of the climb. The crowd's getting a chance to see the riders on 2 occasions here. It's been a nasty day of racing this afternoon. The riders have been battered by the winds when they went up to the coast at Koksijde, and then they were pushed down to the mountains. And now on these circuits around the Kemmelberg, the wind, sometimes it's on the left-hand side, sometimes it's on the right-hand side. In fact, looking at that, Phil, those groups have come together.
The merge we never thought would happen there. That looked as though it was all curtains for everybody, but the combination was wrong. And that means now we're all back to chasing one man here as Alexander Kosinski trying to reopen the attacks.
Well, now that those two groups have come together, there may well be a slight pausing in the action at the front end of that group, and that will give this man an advantage to build his lead up to 20 or 30 seconds. Although I do think they will start to pick up the pace once they get to the Kemmelberg, and they could halve his advantage by the time they get to the summit.
Well, Kosinski has had 9 wins in his career, but he's only had 2 outside of the Baltic states. 1 in Italy and 1 in France. But I must say this last 2 years, he has really started to sharpen his act up, and he's looking very, very good this year.
Well, I'd say this last 1 hour he's been looking extremely good. He's been very aggressive. He's been looking for the opportunity, knowing that if he fails, he's got 2 very strong teammates behind, and that's probably what he's trying to bank on at the moment. He thinks that if he can make a move like this, it takes all of the pressure off the shoulders of Manuel Kinziato, who I think is a man, if we go down to a sprint towards the end, could come up with a win. Just think about Robbie Mcewen. He made all of that big effort, which is not Robbie's normal tactic to do. He made that massive big effort to get across the gap because he thought the race was over, and now he's been caught.
And it didn't work, and so I think he's probably thinking the same thing right now. Paul, on to the Kemmelberg again. Not quite as steep as I thought. It certainly felt 25%, and I rode this climb a few years back, but it's only 18.7. And it comes just in the distance as the riders go round that left-hand bend. That's the steepest part. Now keep an eye on the wheels there of Kosinski and watch how they just bounce on these cobblestones. 25 seconds, he's been given his head, but don't forget it's a long way to the finish on flatter roads. He could do with a bit of help, I think.
Well, Andreas Clear coming round there in their black Cervelo jersey. He realises now that this is the time. Yeah, Matty Goss on the front. He's realising this is also a chance to maybe make a split at the front end of the group. Kaczynski here, Phil, does not look like a man who's weakening. He's actually making here a very dangerous move.
He'll need help. I can't believe he'll time trial to the finish. Matthew Goss is trying to open up. That's Quinziato is also just playing the teammate at the moment, trying to keep it all together here. Well, Matty Goss, another young rider for the future, developing nicely now. He's a Tasmanian cyclist. I think they claim their own country over there in Tasmania, don't they? They certainly get the weather that we're getting here in their winter.
Well, having made all that effort to come across the gap, the riders from Cervelo test team who did all that pacemaking, Phil, are actually disappearing off the back end of this group. But I think their tactic was to replace Dominic Rollin at the front with Andreas Clear, former winner of this race, as you said, and a man probably who's got more chance of Dominic Rollin to win Ghent Wevelgem this afternoon.
Well, we could do with getting rid of some of these motorbikes right now, as we're seeing a counter move. Is that Boyson Hagen?
It is. The youngster on Team Columbia probably been told by George Hincapie to get across the gap here because this is looking just a little bit dangerous. There's Hincapie in third position in the yellow, battling with his wheels. Just behind him is Marcus Burkhardt. And I think Hincapie probably gave him the nod there, Phil, to said to Eddie, as they call him, get off the front and match that move.
I saw Matt Heyman going through with the front group. Is that Wiggins just about? Yes, and Chris Sutton wasn't too far back of that. Meanwhile, over the top, and now about to flick left on the descent here. King of the Mountains jersey being offered to him there. He's not taking it. As Kosinski now has again laid down the foundation of a winning move. But I can't believe he can ride to the finish alone.
No, it's an awful long way, and I think once we've got over the summit of the Kemmel, Phil, what normally happens is in the little farm tracks leading up to the main road, we start to see the groups getting themselves organised and then picking up the pace. And we're looking here, this is a good move by Boyson Hagen. He's probably at around about 10 seconds, and there's a big gap here. Hincapie sees the opportunity as well, looks over to see once again there's a split.
Well, you say it's a split, but Wiggins has done well. He's got over the top and he's just on the tail. There is a split now, and it started around the area of Wiggins there. off the climb for the last time now. This is where Jimmy Casper had his terrible crash here a couple of years ago, but it was on the other descent. The sheer drop on the cobblestones. You see it just as they swing left around that corner. Well, it's off to our right.
There's not that much of a split there, Phil, because I noticed a couple of riders scrambling across to try and get onto Bradley Wiggins' wheel. This is the second man on the road there, and that, in fact, is Edward Posen Hagen, new Norwegian rider, 21 years of age, and it's amazing, really, to think that he seems to have been around forever and ever because he was so dominant in the under-23 section of the sport.
Still the rain is with us. This is Posen Hagen, Edvald, who's well known in the UK and in Ireland for his stage wins of their major tours. And when he was 19 and 20 years of age now, he's not now, of course. Next month he'll be 22. He'd be almost an old man. Good heavens, seems to have been around for ages.
Absolutely. Now what he's got in his mind now is just he's looking at that motorbike in front of him, which is one of the television motorbikes just behind the lone leader, Kuczynski, and he's concentrating on that. He wants to get there. He wants to make the junction and mark this breakaway for Team Columbia High Road. Well,
Kuczynski may know he's coming. He certainly could do with the extra pair of legs if that's the way it's going to be, but he's not slowing down. If Posen Hagen is going to catch him, it's going to be all his own work here. But it looks like he is closing in. A huge effort here from the 21-year-old.
Slowly but surely, he's going to take advantage of this little incline here to try and nail down the gap. I think if Kuczynski looks over his shoulder, Phil, he will probably wait for this rider coming up to join him because, as you said earlier, it is if they've got to have any chance at all of survival, they really need to work together because it's a long, flat road into Wevelgem from here. Oh, nice. Oh, he wanted it or he didn't?
I'm not sure, though, what the heck he did. He threw something off, or did he try to take something
on? He tried to take the bottle from a team helper at the side of the road, and I'm not sure that he actually was quite able to do that, and he's lost out that chance. Not quite made it, which gives you an indication of just how hard Kuczynski's going, but there is the junction.
And so he's done it at 34 kilometres to go. So we've now got two riders here. Kuczynski has been the line so far. Now this youngster from Norway has joined him. And maybe good reason to fly the Norwegian flags, which we've seen plenty of today. Maybe they know something we don't, as this rider on the American Team Columbia High Road squad has crossed the gap.
Well, I think they were probably there for Thor Hushovd, who many people thought would be coming here to ride the Ghent-Wevelgem race this afternoon. But unfortunately for him, he had a pretty nasty crash in the Tour of Flanders just a couple of days ago.
This is the area now of the sort of bleak escarpment all around, or the bleak fields all around. Two leaders. We're getting to the area where a horse ran out and knocked Eric Zabel off not too long ago, a few years back, just before he retired. And the young lady was only 11. She lost control of a horse. It ran out in front of the race and it chose to knock Eric off. And at the finish she apologised, and Eric sent her a racing jersey as a present and said it didn't really matter. What a gentleman. And he's at the finishing line now, I would think, waiting to see how the sprinter Mark Cavendish is doing, but it could be he'll be cheering home a rider on the same team, but not a sprinter really, although he can sprint very quickly. Posen Hagen, when he develops as a stronger rider, he'll be very fast. He won 3 stages of the Tour of Britain last year, which was a great result, of course, on British roads for him. This is the chasers now. They're just going to have to keep the rhythm going, because for the moment they've got to rethink what they do. 2 riders are clear. The elastic has it snapped. George Hincapie and Burkhardt, teammates of Posen Hagen, sitting there behind. The 2 Saxo Bank boys saying, give us a hand. Well, why should they? It's up to the others to chase now.
Well, I think you can see George Hincapie really playing the role of a team captain and a team helper there, and he knows he's got a very good chance here with his man off the front end of the field. But I think it's a little bit precarious to do too much work behind these riders because, as I said, Phil, it's a long way to go to the finish in Wevelgem, and they're looking at the moment at a 26-second advantage. But Hincapie will play the perfect teammate right down to the very end, and once they catch these 2 leaders, watch out for Hincapie making the move.
Matty Heyman, the big man on Rabobank, another Australian on the left of our picture there. Always a workhorse, looking very attentive. Wants more effort from the rest by the look of it. We've been here before, remember, a group 26 seconds ahead of the main chase, and it didn't work out, and it's gone to 27 now.
And there's Chris Sutton on the back there. He's got a very good chance if we get down to the fit. Amazing the number of English-speaking riders in this breakaway. And a few years ago, you never would have seen that in a Belgian classic like this.
It's the changing face of the world of professional cycling, I think. The Australians today have had an outstanding race, and it's a race they've never won. And they're not going to win it at the moment either, unless they do something about those two boys up front.
Well, Team Saxo Bank here have been given the nod, Phil, to get themselves off the front. You can't let this move go very clear, because those two riders, Kuczynski has shown everybody that he's got the strength here this afternoon. And, of course, I think the youngster on his way up, Posen, Hagen, he's got the legs to keep going. And it's a dangerous move now. If the Saxo Bank rider gets across to those leading two, we could see game over.
Well, this is Matty Breschel. He's been told to try and do something about it. And he's out of the saddle now. He's got a little gap, but somebody is shooting across, and it might be it looks like the style of George Hincapie to me.
I think it is the style of Hincapie. Hincapie's looking for the victory here this afternoon. He's going to follow every move that goes clear if he can, because that's what he's looking for. Hincapie down nice and low. By what he's doing here, he's trying to get himself to the wheel of Matty Breschel. Then he'll just sit there like an anchor and hope that the rider from Saxo Bank will turn off.
So Breschel, and the attack has been shut down here by Hincapie. What's this? Meanwhile, back in the pack. It looks like Mark Cavendish on the climb now. They are many minutes behind now. Must be 6 minutes back.
It's a long way back. Fabian Cancellara over on the left-hand side. Hope he's not going to break his chain as he did just a few days ago at the summit of the famous Koppenberg in the Tour of Flanders. Cavendish learning the roads here, Phil. Maybe to come back here in a couple of years' time and look for some success. But he wants to know how to hurt himself on this climb and where to hurt himself.
Well, I think he's doing his own private training session there in the middle of Ghent Wevelgem, because he's come up this hill in first place twice and he's testing himself, because they've got no chance now. We saw the champion of Norway pass through there, his jersey looking like the flag of his country, and there he is, Kurt Attel Halvorsen, and he's been an under-23 world champion as well, but there could be a new Norwegian making his name right now.
Well, there's Tom Bonen coming up now. I think Bonen just riding out the final few kilometres, Phil, of his Paris-Roubaix preparation. 30 kilometres to go for the leaders, but it's a little bit more than that. I make it these guys, Phil, are around about 5 kilometres in arrears, and that will make the gap actually close to 7.5 or 8 minutes.
Well, we might get it on the screen, we might not, but it's got to be all of that. One thing's for certain, they won't close that in 30 kilometres. This is the end of the race today for them.
There's Roger Hammond.
It's Roger Hammond, and he's had a second place finish in this race. He was the only Cervelo to miss the actual breakaway, which went from the gun, which is a bit of a shame, because Roger's a man for this event.
And he's a man from this part of the world as well, because he's lived in Belgium throughout the majority of his career, and he will be kicking himself that he missed out on the split on what was an ideal day of racing for him in these conditions.
A man from the Isle of Man, Mark Cavendish, freewheels down the back straight. He knows it's all gone for the day, but nice training miles for the weekend. Not for him, though. Rightly not riding that race. He's still a bit too young after a good win in Milan-San Remo. He'll prepare for the Tour of Italy or Tour de France coming up.
Picking their way around the corner, taking it very gingerly. There's no point when you're in a group like this, 6 or 7 minutes in arrears, of going down there like a nutcase, because it's so very easy on days like this to deck it, and you can put away a whole season.
Meanwhile, these are the two leaders now, as they're working well together. They've prized out 32 seconds now. It's not running away, is it? So it's not over, and we've seen these breakaways brought back. The Rabobank's deciding what to do here.
Well, they can't really quite decide, and they know that they've got these two riders from Team Columbia High Road, Marcus Burghardt on the left-hand side there. On the right-hand side, George Hincapie. Any move that goes, the two men from Columbia will follow, but they will not assist.
George Hincapie just looking them around. Saxo Bank boy, Breschel getting a bit frustrated there because nobody's chasing. And there's a little bit more. The riders dropped off, rejoining at the back as well.
Yeah, there you can see Kinziato for Liquigas, and alongside Tim Fischer. They are doing exactly the same as the boys from Team Columbia there. Little move again by Fernandez.
Well, we know who the strong men are in this race, at least the frisky ones. That's at the back, and they're rejoining just in time to watch Coldo Fernandez start his move at the front here.
Well, he's riding an exceptional race, and he's one of those riders who's completely on his own. He looks back there to see, and just as those dropped riders were about to make the contact, bang, and it goes away again.
What a horrible feeling that is. When you're in the red zone, you think, I'm going to make it. It suddenly stretches. And sat at the back here is Roland, who was in that original escape, and he's fallen back now, I'm afraid. And Napolitano is also there for Katusha.
Well, the breakaway has actually got, in fact, it's gone up to 50 seconds, and that was a bit of a jump, and they've got the advantage. There's 2 riders from Liquigas there who are discouraging people at the front. There's 2 riders from Colombia. That, in fact, is going to discourage a lot of teams from organising the chase. But if they want to win Ghent Wevelgem, they need to start chasing now.
Lodovic, number 212. It looks like they're in all sorts of bother now. The Milram riders surveys Canavan. They almost got back before the Spanish rider turned the screw. Now they're having to chase back. They might get a little lull. They might still rejoin.
If there is a slight lull, they'll be able to get themselves onto the back end of this group. But there's Brad Wiggins riding very sensibly in this part of the world, and it's nice to see him performing. He may well, Phil, go to the front, Wiggins, to actually whip up the pacemaking for Chris Sutton later on.
Now, he did fall, Paul, because the right leg, as we look, has got holes in his racing tights there. So the reports were true. Wiggins has been down today, and there is the gap. So they're back in, but and now, of course, no more climbs. So these are flat men for the flats roads. They might well recover. Roland, for example, in the black here, is a very good sprinter.
Well, he is, but they haven't quite made it. You know, this is such a difficult thing when you're in a race like this. The last 1 or 2 meters seem to take forever to close down, but they've done it. They've got themselves back into this race, and that was Roland who made the final effort there, number 188.
And the other one is Jez Hunt, who's also got back. So the 2 sprinters on the squad are back in the pack.
Well, there's no chase at the moment. It's Rabobank on the front. I think it's still Bram Tankink who's setting the pacemaking, but the next time check we get, Phil, it's going to be pretty much up to the 1 minute mark. Matty Hagen now on the right-hand side there, coming to the front to set the pace for his teammates. But on the left-hand side, the 2 leaders are still actually cooperating and working very well together. There's another second gained.
They're heading up to the minute now, these 2, and this race so far has been a day for the adventurer. Because those that have gone out front and worked hard have got the gaps. Now, is this the winning gap? And it is. We're looking at a 3rd or 4th time they've attempted it. There's typical Belgian farm roads, a wash in the sewage, the farm sewage coming off the fields there, I hasten to add, as they race through. But the rider Kuzinski here is looking the best I've ever seen him race at the moment.
Yeah, brilliant. Dirty roads, these farm roads in the Flanders here this afternoon, but for these guys, they're not concerned at all about that. What they're thinking about is building up as big an advantage as possible, because still a minute with 26 kilometres to go is not game on. There's Robbie Mcewen. No, it's not Robbie Mcewen, it's Napolitano.
Yeah.
And he's obviously gone back for a little bit of food there. Mcewen must be kicking himself now this afternoon, because he's made some serious efforts to make sure he's at the front of this bike race.
And there's always been somebody willing to attack. Wiggins to the right. Hincapie happy the way things are going. Might be a little frustrated to some degree, because he is a rider who was hoping to win today, but he can't block now. He's got a block now for his teammate up front. This is Elijah. No, it's not. It's the Case de Pan rider in the breakaway up here.
Cameraman doing a tough job of work in this misty rain here, trying to keep the pictures nice and clean for us. Wiggins, I think, Phil, has been given the nod by Matty White, his team manager, to say, right, get up there, right at the front end of the main field, because Chris Sutton can get himself a top 10 finish if we can pull back that group.
He could get himself a top 3 if he could pull back, because he packs quite a sprint finish, that youngster, and he's developing all of the time. So it's down to Bradley to try and use those big legs. It's his one in the World Pursuit Championship. He just lost it, in fact, this year. Didn't defend it to Taylor Phinney, the teenage sensation and the son of Davis Phinney over in the United States. Davis, 2-time winner stage in the Tour de France. There's the breakaway for you again.
And I'm going to throw down the gauntlet for you, Phil, because that performance by Taylor Phinney at the World Championships, I can't think of anybody who's had a medal in the kilometre individual time trial and the team pursuit in the same World Championships for many, many years, and not as many as 30, I don't think, well, and even maybe more.
Flow. Let the letters flow, Paul, because I can't either, and so we'll find out soon enough. But it's absolutely true. He's and he won it with a faster time than Wiggins won the Olympic title last year. So I think that Chris Boardman's record of 4:11.111 is now on the horizon for that man in a year or two's time.
And how proud must Mum and Dad be? Hincapie moving to the front there, playing the ultimate teammate here this afternoon, just sitting on the wheel of Servais Carnarvon. Carnarvon riding himself into this race. He was brought onto Team Milram to be the pilot fish for some of the other riders on Milram for the Classics, and today he's actually making himself into the position of leader of the squad.
The two men who, again, the attackers of the last attack, led by Kuzinski, followed by Boyce and Hagen. They've got together. They now 24 kilometres, 15 miles to race on flat roads, not always in lanes like this. We'll swing onto the main highway, and the last 3.5–4 kilometres are dead straight into town.
Well, the team, I think, making the big mistake here is Team Saxo Bank, because they need to come to the front and maybe try to do a little bit of work to reduce that gap, because that gap now at 1 minute and 15 seconds is looking a little bit precarious. But once you get a man on the front like Bradley Wiggins, well, he can wipe that away all on his own, single-handedly. Wiggins getting into that time trial position that won him the time trial of the 3 days of La Panna a couple of days ago. Hincapie up to third, Marcus Burkhardt there up into fourth, and look at Robbie Mcewen being very attentive, sitting at the front, probably saying to himself, you've caught me out once, but you're not going to do it again.
He's in wheel place number 4 there as the gap opens to 1:20. The 3 times World Pursuit champion and current Olympic champion Bradley Wiggins trying to close these two riders down so he can pave the way for the sprinter in this group, Chris Sutton, to try and get a high finish. I'm not sure, because they're still pulling away, these two versus Wiggins.
Well, it could all change, Phil, once they get onto the big road. It's a little bit demoralising to set the pacemaking on this road here, because this road is slightly uphill, dragging up for the next 3 or 4 kilometres till we then get onto the big 4-lane highway, which will take the riders down into the outskirts of Wevelgem, and that's when we might see the first organisation come into the front end of that group behind. 1 minute and 25 seconds, though, it's actually tilting towards the advantage of looking quite good for these two.
Big gap. And as you can see by the width of the car here, it's not the place to pass either, is it? Very narrow approach for the moment. That's got to be advantage, these two riders. They're changing direction all the time, means they're out of sight. A little bit discouraging for Wiggins here, especially if he knows, and he could know because his team manager behind could tell him, that the gap is in fact opening up and the chase he's administering is not having any effect.
Chris Sutton sitting at the back there. Now the road widening out a fraction, so Kuczynski goes up alongside his team manager here to take on board some more liquid and probably something to eat as well. The team manager's going to say to him, you've got a great chance here, but you guys don't need to mess around right now. You both need to keep working together in order to keep building on that advantage, because as any professional bike rider knows, Phil, on the run in towards a finish in the last 5 or 10 kilometres, a chasing group can lift their pace up to 60 kilometres an hour.
I think that Stefano Zanetta there, the team manager for Liquigas, is getting pretty excited here. There could be a result coming his way. 1:26 the gap. Kuczynski has shown us he's very, very strong. He was in the thick of the action too a few days ago in the Tour of Flanders, and the gap is heading up to 90 seconds. This is big, and it's still all being... This is a mistake by the riders. They're all allowing one man to drive here.
Well, I would have expected a couple of riders to come up from Team Rabobank and maybe a rider from Saxo Bank to lend a hand to the front end of this chase, because one man on his own is going to have a little bit of a hard time. Wiggins now pushing that little push-to-talk button just inside his jersey, wants to know from the team manager if he's having any effect on the gap. Well, I'm sorry to say, Bradley, for the moment, not.
Well, it's 2 years since Alexander Kuczynski has won a cycle race. He won the 5 Ring of Moscow in rather demonstrative fashion back in May 2007. He won the overall, and he cleaned up with most of the daily stages as well, but he hasn't won since. But clearly, he's going to get on the list of the wins this year if he rides like this. Maybe today.
The K-Stepania rider sitting at the back there was Marlon Perez, a rider from Colombia, who we saw ride very well a number of years ago in the Tour of Langkawi, but he started his life off actually as a sprinter on the track, and he was World Junior Points champion many years ago.
Another man who may require those strong sprinting legs at the finish today, but first there's a problem. 2 riders clear, 1:24. They're holding him at the moment, so if Wiggins is still on the front, he's got into his stride now, like pursuiters like to do. And he's riding very, very well. 21 kilometres to go, just over 12 miles to the finish. Soon we'll be heading for the highways and wider roads. And these boys will be in full gun sight of that chase.
See how tricky these roads are. That was Brian Home in the Team Columbia High Road team car there, coming to the front to have a quick chat with his man. And he will give him an awful lot of advice to Edwild Posen Hagen. Brian Home, himself a very seasoned professional bike rider for many, many years. He knows these races.
And he's from Denmark, Brian, but he won't hold that against the Norwegian here in the race. I wonder what language they actually speak in.
Well, it seems to be in nearly all of the professional teams these days, Phil, that English seems to be the common language. And when I was a professional bike rider, it was always French. And if you didn't speak French, you didn't get anywhere.
Pulling back, there's the span of the Flanders bleak countryside today. It's a long way down the twists and turns to find that group now. That is looking rather serious, I think, as the original 33, there's 31 of them in that group. They keep coming back together, and still it's poor old Brad Wiggins for Garmin Slipstream, who is trying to at least limit their gains. 122.
Well, that's what he's doing at the moment. He's actually just limiting the advantage of the breakaway, keeping it locked in, and he's going to hope that later on, if he can hold it at the 120 to 130 mark, then once we get up to the big main road, then there will be some organisation from some of the other teams who have actually missed out on this split.
Well, it's bad news, this. Nobody willing to help him out, and there are plenty of riders here who should think about helping him out. There's only 2 riders up front. There's 2 riders in lime green here, Quinziato and Fisher, so they're not going to help. And we've got a couple of riders on Columbia High Road who aren't going to help, but the rest should be really burying themselves right now.
Well, I have a feeling that...
and up there, I think it's Chris Sutton.
As we look at the men in black here, I think they're having a hard time there. They did most of the work in the early part of the race, and they're now having to pay for that. And I don't think, have got the firepower left at all, Phil, to go to the front and do any chasing at all.
20 kilometres to go, it says on the roadside. Our computer's reading 19 from the finish. It doesn't matter, it's going to come sooner or later. And these boys seem to have lost the drive.
Wiggins sacrificing himself here this afternoon just to keep that gap locked in, and it's not going either up or down for the moment, still locked in at the same amount. Andreas Clear over on the right-hand side. Jez Hunt trying to drag himself to the front to see if he's got any firepower left at all in those legs of his to give his man Andreas Clear a chance of getting his second victory.
Well, Jez Hunt, 35 years of age now, Jez, and still is waiting to ride his first Tour de France, and he's hoping it's this year with Cervelo. He's had 33 wins in his career, which stretches right back to 1990. A bit of a shaky old bend there for Kaczynski, and in fact the gap has opened. Well, but he's quickly corrected it, and Posen Hagen just getting on with the job.
A little bit of panic there, Phil, going around that corner. Those cobblestones, granite cobblestones in this part of the world. We get a chance to see this one more time. He was obviously feeling the bike disappearing away from him. Look at that, very precarious. You see the front end of the machine slipping just a bit. And I have to say that Edvald Bosenhagen went round there very smoothly, but they're now back together again.
Well, they say that Bosenhagen suffered a little bit from lack of confidence. Well, he's not shown it today, has he? I wonder if he went on the word of Hincapie, who seemed to indicate give it a go, and he tried to back the race off on the climb of the Kemmel. Be interesting to know that, wouldn't it?
Well, that is something that we won't know for certain till a little bit later on, but Hincapie is a master tactician, and he is the team captain on the road. There's another little flurry of activity now. The main group really does seem to be going quite fast.
Goss. Is that Tanking with him?
Looks like Bram Tanking has got across there now. That's what the Rabobank riders were looking for now. Those 2 riders now will start to work to see if they can open up the advantage, but I think that will make Mr. Wiggins just a little bit angry, and I think he's going to close down this gap.
Well, the guys are getting so dirty out there now. It's either Goss or Heyman up with that. Sorry, Tanking or Heyman for Rabobank, but certainly Goss there for Saxo Bank. 125 the gap. It's now or never. They can't afford to let it get any bigger.
Well, that group is in a very long line, and that's an indication that this is a serious chaser at the front end of the peloton. It's still all being left up.
Oh, we're going for Tanking.
Yeah, and Goss. This is Goss on the front in the white jersey, the Australian rider from Team Saxo Bank. And he's also starting to develop into a pretty top bike rider on the international circuit. That flick of the arms has come on. Keep the pressure up.
Yes, give me a hand now. Let's go start working. Let's break before they realise we've made the move. Clearly now the breakaway is chasing. It's 125. Are we going to see the reversal now? Have they finally got to grips with the situation? They've only got 17 kilometres to go. It's not impossible to bridge 124, especially with some tired legs on what has been an extremely good attacking race by the leaders of the race all day. The peloton, they've sort of been out of the hunt from about 20 kilometres today.
Yeah, well, this is a good move now. There's a flurry of activities coming behind. I wonder if that's Quinziato trying to get across. It was definitely a rider from Liquigas.
Well, he's doing what George Hincapie did before in defence of Boyce and Hagen. Now he's doing this in defence of Kuzinski. He'll bring the group up to these two, but he won't help them go past. So let's see what happens. Certainly the acceleration is there. 122 is the gap. 17 kilometres left to ride. And it looks like it is Quinziato who is coming across the gap at quite a speed, and the main field behind are taking advantage of this, and this is going to have an effect. We're down to 121, so they are closing in. Tankink and Goss, two of the strong men of the day. Matthew Goss has come of age as well today. He has shown us just what a good bike rider he is. Stage win in the Tour of Britain last year, also a stage win in the Jayco Sun Tour in Australia last October. Big race for the Australians that at the end of the year. Tankink had enough, I think. And Quinziato's done the damage, so we're coming back together again.
But there's again a little split there because of the pressure of the chase behind Bram Tankink, and now we're looking at around about 7-8 riders going clear. And Hincapie again playing the job of team policeman, closing down the gap and not going to the front, trying to give the advantage to his young teammate up the road.
But again, Cervelo missed that move had it succeeded. I think they've got very tired riders on the team now. They had terrific numerical advantage early on. Here goes Goss. Is he going again?
I think he's going again there. He's seen the fact that there's a lot of sore legs in that group there behind him. The reaction now coming behind. I think that's Burkhardt now who's decided to take the work up for Team Columbia.
Everybody giving it a go. But take your hat off to the Tassie rider here, because Goss has gone again. And sometimes the time to attack is the minute the catch is made.
Well, the move one was by Marcus Burkhardt, just bringing it back together. But Bazayev, the champion of Kazakhstan, has nailed them all back once more. And again, it's still the same complete group, and the gap has hardly been affected by these accelerations. It's still 1 minute and 19 seconds.
Yeah, after all that jumping around, I think we pulled back about maybe less than 10 seconds. All together again.
Onto the big main road now. There's the chance for well, in fact, that's not all together.
No.
There's again still that little gap as they go around, and everyone picking themselves around that
It's in 3 groups, or it was a moment ago, and I think it still is.
Oh, Napolitano's been caught out here at the back, and I think that's a Dominique Rollin as well, who's having a hard time. This is starting to get a very difficult and grippy race. Bazayev covered again by Burkhardt. Matty Goss in the white jersey coming up as well.
Well, Burkhardt, himself a winner back in 2007, now trying to block here for his teammate, with Boyce and Hagen up front, a youngster from Norway. Goss is brought back to heel on the left of our picture. Bazayev is going with everything, but he's really outnumbered. He's got no teammates at all here. So he's just trying to take advantage of an attack by another major team.
Well, this is not the kind of road you want to see when you're in a small 2-man breakaway, because the main field chasing now can see roughly where the riders are. They can judge how much of an effort they need to make. But the 2 men in front here, Phil, are sharing the pacemaking. They're riding at a fairly constant temp speed all of the time. Behind, we're having accelerations up to 60 kilometres an hour. Then everybody gets caught and it slows down to 40 kilometres an hour. And that is, in fact, an advantage for the 2 leaders because they ride consistently.
Minute 13, and the counter-attack again, not good for the breakaway at the moment. And goodness me, Goss is mixing in with it again.
And Matty Hayman, it really seems to be, isn't it? It really seems to be the race of the Australians here this afternoon. Yeah, that was Andreas Klyer getting onto the back wheel of Matty Hayman.
Now Klyer's having a go here. He's only just come back up to the group because he was split off in that previous attack. He's now going to try and go alone. I don't know where Goss is getting it from here, but he's driving again. He's gone alongside Klyer.
Oh, and Matty Hayman in the orange jersey of Rabobank there, Phil, is just scrambling to get onto the back of the move. Again, somebody's gone the wrong way there. It looks like Robbie Mcewen.
Oh, dear. Well, he'll come back, but when is the question? They're all off to the right with the main field, and McEwen's going to have to go round and hopefully rejoin. Bit of hard work before we run out of grass there, but there's the long line, virtually all together. Well, and again, it's Goss who's driving.
Gives McEwen a chance to see what the faces of the other riders are like in the group here. as he now slots in halfway down the line.
A long straight road, and we're now looking at 1:12 seconds. On the rise up there was Robert Beat. 3 riders are trying to get clear. Hagen is right. The Australians are having something of a good day today. Hagen and Goss, both from Australia. And Andreas Clyde, a former winner for Cervelo. They've put matters to rights. They've been on the defensive almost all of the time today.
Well, I think Andreas Clear was the strongest rider left in the bike race for Cervelo test team, and that's why now he's trying to take the pressure off his teammates who've done a lot of chasing on a number of occasions. Coldo Fernandez has decided he's going to go, but that number of his looked like a sail on his back.
Well, that is Fernandez who's gone again. He's riding more like a Belgian than a Spanish rider today on their roads. And he's not going to give up. Again, like Basayev, a rider with no teammates here. You've got to do it yourself. And he reckons that those 3 might have some reason to go. So he's going to try and join them. We'll see if the others will come. Looking at Goss, though, Paul, he's had 1 podium place in the past in the semi-classics in Belgium. Kuurne, Brussels, Kuurne. Got a 3rd place last year. And that's not very far away from here, Kuurne.
Certainly isn't. It's not too far away, around about 10 kilometres from Wevelgem. Heyman, Goss and Clear now with the chase coming just over on the right-hand side there from Fernandez. And there's no reaction at the front end of the main field. And on this occasion, you can see that the guys from Colombia didn't manage to cover this, but they're not going to chase it now. Oh, there's a dog
in the pack.
Woof. Wow.
Oh, boy, but he's ran away pretty sharply, and it looks as though he's wagging his tail with glee there. Nobody down. And before you all write in, the dog seems fine, because that's what normally happens. You never ask what the riders are like.
Well, I tell you what, there will have been a few heart rate. Look at these guys. They were all extremely attentive, and that dog, he was lucky to not get T-boned on an occasion like that.
He was. Well, all is safe, and that's all that matters. Back up with the leaders here. God, well, not the leaders, but the leaders of the group. Goss, Heyman, Clear.
Well, they're actually starting to eat into the advantage of the 2 men up the road at 11 kilometres to go. These 3 riders are now looking at 1:08, and it appears to me that they're all cooperating, so there is the possibility that they may make the junction with the 2 in front.
And 5 riders going to the finish. It'd be hard to pick a winner right now. Andreas Clyde, I think, could go in favourite for the win. Maybe Matthew Goss, who packs quite a sprint. And he's been working terrifically hard today. I would say Saxo Bank, very pleased with this signing.
No, certainly, definitely with the man that they brought into the squad. Matty Heyman has had a fine day out as well, but I think he's starting to feel that little bit of pressure, and he's taking the responsibility of being the man to go into the move for Team Rabobank. Looking a bit ragged now as Matty Goss goes to the front, says, come on, keep the pace, let's keep sharing. We've got to keep an eye on those men in front. 1 minute and 8 seconds corresponds to around about 1 kilometre in distance on the road, and we're now at 10 kilometres to go, so they've got about 14 minutes to close down that gap.
Goss looks as though he's labouring, but he's not. He's rather enjoying this race. I think Clyde told him that, just don't panic, work together, take it easy, because he was getting a bit excited. The same with Heyman. He's a very good, solid pacemaker here. And it's hard to think that Matty Goss, you know, he's not 23 until November this year, so he's another young star of the future.
A lot of young names starting to come through to the top end of the sport. There are the 3 chasers, and that little bit of a kilometre up the road are the 2 men that they're trying to pull themselves back into. As we pull back, we might get a chance to see just exactly where Fernandez is. There he is. And he's probably not much more than 15 or 20 seconds off the back of that 3-man group. And it seems to me that he's got a very strong pair of legs this afternoon. And the group, not very well organised.
Well, they've been hit so many times, and so many times the individuals have been in breakaways thinking this is the move, and it hasn't worked out. So they're losing a little bit of the firepower back here now. But it's only 64 seconds to the 3 chasers. They have a chance. Begin to wonder whether these boys have anything left.
I'm trying to figure out now who's going to come to the front and do the pacemaking. I would expect it to maybe be Robbie Mcewen himself, because Mcewen here is seeing his top 5 placings move up the road. Mcewen's there right in the middle in about 6th position from the right-hand side, and trying to encourage these rides to work in an echelon. In Belgium, by the way, this is not called an echelon, it's called a wire, and that's how they're performing across the road.
Just 10 kilometres to go. These are the 2 men who broke away and got together after they came away from the Kemmelberg for the last time. Kuzinski was the man who started it, as he so often has today, and Hagen joined him with a very good chase, putting a lot of strong riders on the defensive back in that bunch. And these two are showing no signs of weakness at all. I think these are the only chance now. There's the dog situation in the background.
Well, you see
he
how...
definitely made a definite choice which one he wanted to bite there, Paul. And fortunately, it was a near side rider. Otherwise, there could have been a bad crash.
Certainly could have been. And everybody was attentive, though, despite the fact that we've had an extremely hard race with these riders being in the saddle for almost 5 hours of racing. They all responded very quickly to avoid any incident there on the road. Turning off the big main road now into the little industrial area just around the outskirts of Wevelgem. 9 kilometres to go. They're still holding on to a minute, and they'll be paying serious attention now to that group behind, because that, I think, will begin to concern them.
9 kilometres to go. It went to 8, actually, but we've gone back to 9 at 62 seconds. Is the gap. Somebody, is that Robbie trying to pedal off the front?
I was just having a look to see it. It looks like a Katusha rider.
Yeah, well, well, maybe it is Napolitano. I haven't seen him for a while, though. I thought he'd gone.
He was struggling at the back of the group, but after one of the little slowing sessions, he may well have managed to reintegrate into the peloton. These are the 3 chasers. They're still looking for a minute. It's still a little bit precarious. It all depends what happens over the next 5 kilometres or so, whether or not they can eat into that advantage. And as we look, it is starting to slip downwards, the advantage of the 2, down to 58 seconds.
Goss looking for more firepower from Clear. Matt Hagen has got himself locked into the rhythm here, and he just never seems to slow down, Matty Hagen. He just sits there and pushes those pedals down.
I'm just trying to work out how this is going to unfold. I reckon if they can get to about the 30-second mark with 5 kilometres to go, they've still got themselves a serious chance of catching these 2 men. But Kozinski has shown us the form that he's got here this afternoon, and looking at the pedalling style of both of these riders, Phil, they don't look like men weakening to me. They've still got a lot of energy in those legs.
Yeah. 54 seconds. They're clawing them back, but is it enough? 8 kilometres, it should be possible, but at this stage of the race, these boys totally committed. Clier also coming to the end of his career now. Matty Hagen will be 31 later this month. So he's also riding very strong. You know, Rabobank appreciate having this tall Australian on their squad because of his firepower in pacemaking. He doesn't win a lot of races.
No, he doesn't, but he's a strong man, a man that you can rely on in the early part of races to look after the hopes of men like Juan Antonio Fletcher or Oscar Freire. Freire, by the way, starting to make a comeback now and was riding in the Pays Basque race this week.
In fact, Hagen on the right here, just playing with his little radio piece in his ear, hasn't won a race since he won that Commonwealth Games title in Melbourne back in 2006. But he's played his part in many races, and of course, every player is a professional, has a special part to play on a cycling team. Not all of them can win. This man thinks he can, though. Coldo Fernandez also can finish well and desperate to reach those 2 leaders. Forgotten all about him, actually, Paul.
He's in 6th place on the road, but he's looking for 30 seconds to catch the 3-man group.
Yeah.
And the main field now is starting to actually look a little bit out of it. The only situation could be that the 3 chasers catch these 2 men, but they've stopped eating into their advantage. It's not really gone down over the last kilometre.
Well, I think Robbie Mcewen was right about one thing. This is not going to be a bunch sprint today. They have completely committed today at the front of the breakaway. They have attacked. It's been a very good race to watch, and it's not going to come down to the finishing line altogether. I think we can safely say that. But the winner is still not clear. 8 kilometres out, these are the 2 leaders. Then we're chased by 3, and then on the road we've got Coldo Fernandez chasing, yeah.
Yeah, the rain starting to come down once again. A little motorway bridge that these riders are going to drag themselves over. They've still got energetic pedalling style. These men are hoping that there's a little bit of tactical finessing goes up in front, because that's, I think now, Phil, the only chance they will have of pulling back the 2 men in front.
Oh, Andreas Clear there just looks up. He really is, I think, just about at the limit now. 50 seconds. It's still nibbling down, but it's not coming down quick enough. And yet, on the long straight run to the finish, and we're swinging onto the road, they can see the leaders once they all get on the road.
On the big long straights, they certainly can, but these 2 working well. They would probably have had the advice from their team managers not to try any tactical finessing for the moment, because they still need to remain as allies until the final kilometre of the race. Swinging around another one of those little bends there and keeping themselves up to speed as much as possible. 7 kilometres to go, and they still have 50 seconds advantage, the two men in front.
Well, Clear in February finished 7th in the first Belgian Classic, Het Nieuwsblad. And he has won this race in the past. He had his 33rd birthday in January this year, so he's the oldest man in the leading 5 just now. As we now see these two have never missed a turn. They've completely shared the pacemaking.
No, that's the only way to survive, especially on the run into the end of a long classic like this. So almost 5 years in the saddle, and still another kilometre has ticked away for these riders, and still it's around about the 50-second mark. But now Matty Hagen getting a little bit more nervous about the fact that they're not eating into that advantage, going to the front and keeping the pressure up.
I think you upset them then, Paul. You said 5 years in the saddle. Did you mean 5 hours?
5 hours. Probably feels like 5 years.
It probably does to some of them back there, that's right. 6 kilometres left, 53 seconds. It should be enough. But will it be? Goss is going again. We've gone back to the leaders.
That's the 5 kilometre banner across the road there. Kuczynski still prepared to come up to the front. Posen Hagen must be wondering now what he's going to do to beat this rider from Belarus. But Posen Hagen is a man who's got a very fast turn of speed when it comes down to the end of races. But when you're in a two-man group like this, Phil, it's always a little bit precarious, because it depends who is the freshest of the riders in the group, who's expended a lot of energy on the run in towards the finish, who used more energy in the first half of the race. It's all an addition of all of the efforts that you've made during the day.
Well, we're unlucky for the rider's point of view. We're at the finishing line and it is raining quite heavily now. You can see here, just a couple of kilometres out, how wet the roads are. The rain saved itself really heavily until the end and away from the mountains, but it's been absolutely tippling down here at the finish. There's been an amateur race here as well, which is now finished. Road is clear for the run-in. Inside 5 kilometres to go. These two cannot afford to finesse. They've got to stay working together. 51 seconds is not a lot.
It is not very much at all, and you can lose half of that if you start to pretend that you're weakening on the run-in towards the finish and don't do as much work as you have been doing over the last kilometres. And if you start to mess around in a group like that at the front, these three guys are going to catch you. Goss in second position, Clear at the back in the black jersey. I have to say, Matty Hagen has got fine legs this afternoon. He's got a lot of power still left.
A little flick of the arm from Matty calls through his countryman, Matthew Goss, but of course a rival team. Clear also working as best he can, although he's missed a turn there. Now that's interesting. Clear didn't go through, so he's feeling the pace.
Well, the gap is still pretty much locked in. These two men are riding at almost exactly the same pace as the three riders who are chasing them. It's not going up and it's not going down. So theoretically, as long as they keep riding like this, the winner of this year's Ghent Wevelgem is going to be one of these two riders.
And if you're watching cycling for the first time, the race referee is the first car behind the riders, and the team cars represented in the breakaway are behind. Then there's a neutral car to help anybody here. But they have to drive on the right of the road to allow passage of anything on the left of the road. And these three riders here now have lost a gap, 1 second, and they've forced Clear to come and do his little bit.
And what is also good for the morale of the two riders in the breakaway is that they know that the gap is still a solid gap as long as there are still cars behind them, because the race referee will remove those cars from the gap as soon as the advantage starts to come down to the 30-second mark.
Well, that's the first reversal I can recall, out to 51 from 50. That's good enough at 3 kilometres. The one of those two is going to win the race now, and that is sure. This group is racing for third position on the day. Goss is in the white. He's probably the sprinter of the group, and it looks as though Clear is not feeling too hot, so it could be the two Australians going for third today.
Well, Matty Goss is a very fast finisher, and I think you're right, Phil. I think Andries Clear now is starting to show the fact that he is weakening a fraction. Again, the compounded effort that he and his team have made right since the very start of the race this morning.
Now, are we going to see these two ease back a little bit and start finessing to manoeuvre the other one into the front? If they start doing that, watch that 50 seconds come down quite quickly. 3 kilometres. Remember that our computer here won't be in absolute sync, but that banner across the road just ahead is the 2 kilometre to go arch.
Well, with the two team managers of these riders behind them in the breakaway, Stefano Zanata for Liquigas, and of course with Brian Holm of Team Columbia, they are very clever ex-professional bike riders. They will be telling their men here just to keep riding, don't even think about the victory until you get to the last kilometre. And despite the bad weather, there's quite a few people who've come out to see Ghent Wevelgem.
Terrific crowd here as we head now this dead straight to the finishing line now at 2 kilometres to go. The gap has come down a little bit, 49 seconds. They're not coming back now. These two will know now. They've got the race between themselves as they are trying now to decide how are they going to win, how are they going to beat one another here.
Well, in fact, just having said that, Phil, it looks as if Posen Hagen has decided to take longer turns at the back. I think he's trying to recuperate a fraction before we get into the final kilometre of the race. Kaczynski has done a lot of work in the race. He was the one who tried to attack on a number of occasions and probably attacked 3 or 4 times until he got the successful move he was looking for.
Well, this will be a huge result for Liquigas winning here if that's the case. Here are the 3 chasers heading for 2 kilometres. And it looks like we're at 48 seconds at 2 kilometres to go. So they're not going to catch up now. They'll start to think of who or how they can finish third. Pressure's off for these two as far as the chase goes. Now they've got to work out how they beat one another. There will be the kite, the red triangle in the sky indicating 1 kilometre to go.
1,000 metres up to the finishing line now as Posen Hagen looks over his shoulder to try and figure out now how is he going to get himself across the line in first place. Kaczynski looks across at the Norwegian rider with him saying, right, well, how am I going to beat you? What I'm going to try and do is ride from the front.
Very interesting there. He took a good look at Hagen and then went straight by him and continued to steady the pace. But Edvald is not moving here, and now Kaczynski's decided it's time to shut down. He's going to ride to the right of the road and force the Norwegian to go up his inside.
Well, the young rider from Norway, he knows how to sprint when he has to, and he's not going to be intimidated in a situation like this. And I think he actually, Phil, wants to start the sprint from second position.
He's not moving, is he? He's just holding it now, and the pace is off. They'll be closing in behind, but it's all too late. Kaczynski now is waiting, and he won't go until he sees the shadows, but he's not going to see any shadows now, and he's missed it. He looked the wrong way, and in fact, Hagen has gone. I think he's gone too early here. He's gone a long way out from the finishing line. The Norwegian rider is going to have to find something special, or he may find a tyre Kaczynski can't do anything about it. He's into his slipstream, but he's going to win this, Hagen, or is he? Because now comes Kaczynski. He's given up, and Hagen has just confirmed himself as a great bike rider. That's the biggest win of his career, and he's only just 21 and a half years of age.
Well, I'll tell you what, Phil, that may well be the biggest victory of his career, but I'd like to add so far, because I have a feeling that young man is going to go on from strength to strength, especially on the squad that he's with, because there are so many top professionals who he can learn from.
Well, what a result too there. That's the highest ever finish, I think, by a Belarus rider, by the way, in second place. Here's the race for third place now. Now the sprinter's got himself on the front here, Matthew Goss, and Clear is deciding to try and take them on for the finish, and that's exactly what Goss has wanted. He's gone into his slipstream, but watch out for Matty Hagen here, who's giving it the best shot, but now Goss is going, and this will be a formality in the end, and just on 49 seconds has gone by as Goss gets third place for Saxo Bank in Australia, and fourth for Matty Hagen, and fifth for Andreas Kleyer.
Well, this is the winner on the day, Phil, and that was a great performance by this young man. Very confident coming into the last kilometre of the race.
Well, he could well be speaking English, but we'll catch up later with interviews, I guess. But he's going to be a very happy man. And what a result for Columbia High Road as well, this American-based team in California. They brought him in last year to their new squad, and he's now come really, really good. But he was always good. He used to ride for a small team out of Norway before he came here. Here's the lone warrior from the north of Spain coming in, Coldo Fernandez, and he'll get sixth place today. A hard way to do it, but he deserves a good finish.
Well, he was looking for the move throughout the afternoon, but he just didn't quite have the legs to get across to those 3 chasers. But a fine performance by Euskaltel Euskadi, and a sixth place finish for him.
Yeah, I think he'll feel pretty pleased with himself when he's showered off. As the remnants of the breakaway, the clock is ticking out towards 2 minutes now. Looks like Bram Tankink is going to give it a run for the finish, but he's being challenged all the way to the line. It looks like Marcus Burkhardt, the winner of this race in 2007, will get, in fact, 7th place on the line. And that'll be Thomas Zieler, I think it is, Elisa rather, who's the other Rabobank in the breakaway, who snatched the places. Kinziato was there as well. As we look now to the remnants of the breakaway coming in, the gap just over 5 hours. Good race time today, very fast indeed, because it finished inside 5 hours for the winner.
Well, in fact, I think I saw at the front of that group, Phil, Jeremy Hunt putting in a fine finish. Now, this is the acceleration of the young man from Norway. And I must admit, I thought too that he'd made a bit of a mistake there. But look how much of a gap he'd actually opened. The man behind him, Kuczynski, was actually having a very difficult time getting into his slipstream, and he never really quite made it.
No, he didn't, but it's an awful long way. He went about 700 metres out, I think. That seems to be a ridiculously long way, but he must have been very, very confident. In the end, he wins by a clear length for the biggest win of his career. And Kuczynski also back on the block. Highest ever finish for his nation in Ghent Wevelgem.
Yeah, but look at his confidence here. Just looking down there once or twice there just to see if he could see or feel the shadow of the man with him coming any bit closer. And there, at this point, he knows, no problem, mate. It's in the bag for Columbia High Road.
Well, what a finish. 2 Australians and a German, and no sign of the first Belgian finisher, but certainly no Belgian riders finished in the top 15 riders today. That's not a good result, is it?
That is a disastrous result for Belgium, and that's a bit of a surprise, really, because you nearly always get 3 or 4 Belgians in the top 10 in a race like this.
There's the result as Boyce and Hagen gets the great victory for Team Columbia High Road. Kuczynski in second. We saw all this as it came across the line. Looking further down, it was Lisa in 8th, Quinziati 9th, and Jeremy Hunt, the British rider on Cervelo, completing the top 10 there. And quite a variety of flags, but none of them from Belgium, sadly.
George, you didn't think this morning it was going to be a bunch sprint, did you, because of the weather conditions?
No, I mean, we knew it was going to be pretty epic. You know, we were hoping to keep Cav out of trouble, but obviously it worked out just as good with Eddie winning.
That was a great tactical move at the end there, and it looked to me as if you guys were very comfortable with the situation, because if it ever came back together, you and Marcus could take over.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was away right before the camel, we got caught. I was feeling really good. I saw Eddie go, and at the top, I just kind of shut it down, and he pulled away, got the gap, caught the liquid gas guy, and then we were in a perfect situation. We didn't have to chase, and you know, he's one of the fastest guys in the world, so it couldn't have been a much better situation for us.
Not too tough a day like this, 4 days before Paris-Roubaix?
It was tough, definitely tough, but once you're there, you know, we were fighting for the win. We won the race, so we all played a major role in the team victory today. And Ghent Wevelgem is a very important race, but I'll probably take Friday off the bike.
Okay, good luck. Go and get warm.
Thank you.
Quick word, Kev. You didn't get the win yourself today, but good team performance.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, it was a sweet revenge. You know, I punctured right at the beginning, and that's when Lotto and Cervelo put the hammer down. And we had 3 guys there, and yeah, obviously Edvald went 30k to go, and you know, everybody knows what a talent he is, and he showed today to the world. So
tough for you though, a day like that, having to sit at the back in the defensive role for a long, cold day in the saddle.
That's okay. You know, it's it's 200 kilometers in the legs anyway, and yeah, at least we can go back to the hotel and celebrate tonight anyway. So.
All right, well done to the team.
Thanks very much.
Marcus, can I get a quick word? Great teamwork today by Team Columbia. It could have gone any way, really, either Eddie, you, or George Hincapie.
Yeah, I think today we were so strong because we kept all race together, and that was the key for the success.
And it also helps the morale going into a race like Paris-Roubaix when you've got a victory like this under your belt with the team.
Yeah, for sure. I think now we can be really motivated that now we know we have a good team, but also the others, they are strong, and on Sunday the race is 260 Ks, and it also will be a really, really hard race.
Well, good luck. Congratulations for today.
Thanks.
Edward, it's always very difficult to get a first big win as a professional, but today is really the start of your career.
Yeah, it is, and it's one of my biggest, and I'm really happy to do so good.
I think the team is also very happy today. Everyone talked about Cavendish, but George Hincapie and Marcus Burkhardt, they were all behind defending for you.
Yeah, there was really good teamwork, and yeah, I'm really thankful for all the help.
It's always a bit scary when you're in a two-man breakaway at the end of a long, hard race like that, but were you confident coming into the final kilometre?
Yeah, I felt quite strong, and yeah, I have done win like this before, and I know a little bit how I should do it, so I was really happy.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Why did you go so early?
I felt it was the right moment to go, and I know if I go on the left side, it's...
You surprised him?
Yeah, I think so. I went go a little bit behind him and then had much more speed than him.
The peloton broke up after only 10 kilometers into the race. Did you know immediately this is going to be it? I mean, the good breakaway?
Yeah, it was really a lot of wind, and we did a lot crosswind, so I had a good feeling the whole day, and felt strong, so it's really fun.
The fact that you started the sprint before the 300 meters mark, is that because you were a little bit afraid of Kosinski?
Yeah, I was a little bit afraid, but I felt strong, and I know I can hold a long time, so I had a good feeling.
Matty, tough day today, but at the end you must be happy with the podium.
Yeah, certainly very happy. You know, this is my first podium in a Pro Tour event, and it was a tough day today, and I would have liked to have been in that front group of two, but you know, I made the most of what I could do in the last 20 kilometres. I had good legs, and you know, I'm happy with a third place here.
Well, this race went straight out of the gun, didn't it?
It certainly did. I think the race was already split after 10 kilometres, so it was you had to be really on your toes at the start there and pay a lot of attention, and it was a really strong group. So it was lucky that we all worked well together and stayed away.
Well done, mate.
Thank you.
Rain, go away, and in fact it did, but not until the Norwegian rider Edvald Boysen Hagen had crossed the finishing line. You know, he's not 22 years of age until next month, and now I think he really has come of age because he's given himself a lot of confidence with a big classic victory. Colombia really on a high, aren't they? Because they picked up Milan-San Remo, now they've won Ghent Wevelgem. What chance have they got of George Hincapie winning Paris-Roubaix? Well, that's another story. For Paul Show in Filligat saying from Wevelgem in Belgium, we'll see you next in France. Goodbye.